Chapter 1280. Yen Beichen froze on the spot with widened eyes and quivering lips. He looked at everything in disbelief, as though he wanted to shout, but he could not make a single sound. Qin Pianran's life force drained rapidly. Her essence spirit was pierced by the sword beam, and even an immortal would not be able to save her. The reason why she did not die immediately was because she had consumed the 9 Revolutions soul return elixir, and her essence spirit was not destroyed on the spot. Qin Pianran turned around slowly and looked at Yen Beichen in the distance with a gentle expression. Her eyes were filled with reluctance and longing. They had been together for way too short a time. Initially, they wanted to leave the cultivation world and spend the rest of their lives together. Unfortunately, everything was over. Beichen, I can't stay anymore. Qin Pianran's tone was weak, as though every single word she said was draining her life force. I can't stay by your side any longer. You have to be all right. Qin Pianran could no longer breathe. She felt miserable, and thought about how Yen Beichen would be left alone after her departure. She did not know what sort of torment he would have to endure in the future, and could not help but sigh before collapsing onto the ground. In the skies, the white clouds changed. Countless images flashed before her eyes. They were all scenes of her and Yen Beichen in the bamboo forest and the wooden house over the years. Eventually, there was only a figure left in her eyes. With that figure, she closed her eyes. Yen Beichen did not move at all, and merely watched everything in a daze. His body trembled slightly, and he felt a sharp pain in his chest, as though a sharp weapon was stabbing him repeatedly. He had once said that even if Qin Pianran wanted to leave, he would not let go. He had once promised Qin Pianran that he would spend the rest of his life with her and never leave her. But now, he could only watch helplessly as Qin Pianran left. There was nothing he could do. Why? What did I do wrong? What did Pianran do wrong? We want to leave the world of cultivation. Why don't you let us? Why do you have to come to our door and separate us? Yen Beichen's fingers dug deep into the soil. His eyes were red and his heart was filled with endless hatred. He hated the world, hated Tao Lord Immortal Sword, hated Tao Lord Cloud Rain, hated the Sword Sect, hated the cultivation world, and hated everything. He even resented himself. He hated himself for not being able to detect the danger earlier and leave this place. He hated himself for being useless. She could only watch helplessly as her beloved died in front of her. This hatred was endless. It soared into the sky, almost condensing into solid form, and piercing through heaven and earth. Yen Beichen's body emitted streams of demonic qi. They were pitch black and extremely terrifying. In the depths of this bamboo forest, there was a devil blade that had fallen into a deep slumber. Under the stimulation of this hatred, it gradually awakened. The demonic saber trembled slightly. This intense hatred made it extremely excited. This was the real Li Hen. Without experiencing this heart-wrenching and bone-chilling change, one would never be able to comprehend the true power of the Li Hen Sutra. Apart from its first master, even Tao Lord Hatred did not meet the requirements of the Li Hen Sutra. That was the reason why when Tao Lord Hatred fought against Su Zimo noticed a flaw and broke it with many incantations of the Buddhist monasteries. Su Zimo gripped his fists tightly with a cold expression. The entire process changed in an instant, and he could not react in time. Since Immortal Sword wanted Tao Lord Cloud Rain to kill Yen Beichen, Su Zimo could only save Yen Beichen first. If he chose to save Qin Pianran, Yen Beichen would die. This was Immortal Sword's scheme. This scheme had directly caused the deaths of 3 people. Tao Lord Cloud Rain, Elder Qin and Qin Pianran were all dead. After killing Qin Pianran with the Immortal Sword, he chuckled coldly and turned into a ray of sword light that sped into the distance. There were many escape techniques in the cultivation world. The speed of sword escape was definitely not at the forefront. Immortal Sword believed that given his cultivation realm, Su Zimo would not be able to stop him if he wanted to escape. Immortal Sword, let's see where you can escape to. When he saw Immortal Sword escape, Su Zimo's killing intent reached its limits. He roared and endless thunder surged from his body. At the same time, a pair of dermic power wings grew behind him. His body transformed into a golden beam of light and chased after Immortal Sword. Lightning escape? Ethereal wings and ground-traversing golden light were released at the same time. Su Zimo's speed reached its limits, and was even faster than Immortal Sword. Before Immortal Sword could escape far, he felt a biting, killing intent approaching him. It was as though there was a thorn in his back, and his scalp tingled. He looked back and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Su Zimo was right behind him, and had already caught up. The distance between the two of them was closing continuously. At this rate, Su Zimo would be able to catch up to him before long. How is that possible? Immortal Sword was shocked, and his eyes were flustered. Araki Takashi is only at the Dharma characteristic realm. How can his movement technique reach such a level? Finally, a hint of panic flashed through Immortal Sword's eyes. Su Zimo's strength had completely exceeded his expectations. Don't panic. At that instant, a voice suddenly appeared in his mind. Immortal Sword was delighted when he heard that voice. With this person by his side, there was no need for him to escape. He could turn around at any time and join forces with this person to kill Araki Takashi. That was because this person was Heavenly Secrets of Enigma Palace. He only knew that Heavenly Secrets was at the conjoint body realm. Even he did not know what level Heavenly Secrets' combat strength was at. The successor of Enigma Palace had always been extremely mysterious. However, Immortal Sword was certain of one thing. Heavenly Secrets' combat strength was definitely above his. Right now, Araki Takashi's 3 heaven and earth dharma characteristics had already dissipated, and he released hundreds of heaven-slaying sword chi. The power of his essence spirit must be almost depleted. If the two of them joined forces, they were 100% confident that they could kill Araki Takashi. Furthermore, Heavenly Secrets was still hidden in the dark. Even he hadn't noticed when Tianji had arrived. Immortal Sword gradually slowed down. The distance between him and Su Zimo was closing continuously. When he was less than 100 feet away, Immortal Sword suddenly turned around, and an extremely sharp spirit consciousness burst forth from his glabella, condensing into a long sword that pierced toward Su Zimo's head with a shuddering, killing intent. Sword Sex Essence Spirit Secret Skill. At the same time, a figure suddenly appeared in the void beside Immortal Sword. He wore loose Taoist robes, and had a Confucian crown on his head. He had a faint smile on his face, but his attacks were extremely sharp and merciless. The glabella of the Confucian scholar shone brightly, and his spirit consciousness condensed into a gray arrow that tore through the air, as though it could pierce through everything. The Confucian scholar released his Essence Spirit Secret Skill at the same time. That Essence Spirit Secret Skill was even more terrifying and sharp than Immortal Sword's sword. The release of Essence Spirit Secret Skills by 2 conjoint body mighty figures placed Su Zimo in danger instantly. Chapter 1281. Immortal Sword turned and attacked extremely suddenly. Furthermore, Heavenly Secrets had appeared. Initially, he thought that Su Zimo would be caught off guard and would definitely be shocked. In his shock, there was a high chance that he would be killed instantly by the 2 Essence Spirit Secret Skills. Unfortunately, Immortal Sword was disappointed. When he turned back, there was no hint of panic on Su Zimo's face. When he condensed his Essence Spirit Secret Skill, Su Zimo's spirit consciousness was condensing as well, as though he was prepared. Crack. Crackle. Suddenly, a long whip condensed from lightning appeared from Su Zimo's glabella, and whipped towards the incoming sword with a destructive aura. A single Essence Spirit Secret Skill was not enough. Buzz. The void trembled. A bedazzling golden light burst forth from Su Zimo's glabella. A gigantic swastika symbol descended, as though it was divine and flawless, colliding towards Immortal Sword's Essence Spirit Sword as well. 2 Essence Spirit Secret Skills were released at the same time. Immortal Sword's expression changed in shock. If Su Zimo only had a single Essence Spirit Secret Skill, it would not have been much. After all, Su Zimo was only at the Dharma characteristic realm. Even if the Essence Spirit Secret Skill was inherited from the Thunder Emperor, it could not hurt him. But now, Su Zimo released 2 Essence Spirit Secret Skills that charged towards him without bothering about Heavenly Secrets' Essence Spirit Secret Skill at all. What a lunatic! Immortal Sword cursed. The 3 Essence Spirit Secret Skills collided instantly. It was silent, but the void was trembling, twisting, and even collapsing. A terrifying divine sense fluctuation burst forth, and the surrounding bamboo forest silently turned into fine powder. Ah! Immortal Sword shrieked, and his essence spirit felt a sharp pain in his consciousness. His essence spirit was injured in this head-on clash. Araki Takashi, you've injured my essence spirit. You have to die too. Immortal Sword roared with a menacing expression. In his opinion, there was no way Suzumo could defend against Heavenly Secrets' essence spirit secret skill, since he had already released 2 of his essence spirit secret skills. Suddenly, just as Tianji's primordial spirit arrow was about to strike, Suzumo's left wrist lit up with a brilliant and sacred golden light. The golden light quickly spread and formed a golden light shield around Suzumo. Mysterious and ancient Buddhist characters were engraved on the light shield. From Suzumo's left wrist, there were even Sanskrit chants of the Buddhist monasteries that were incomparably vast and deafening. A faint smile hung on Tianji's face, and his expression remained unchanged. However, he still frowned when he saw the golden light shield condense. He thought that he could calculate everything. Before he made his move, he had already anticipated Suzumo's reaction. He had anticipated that Suzumo would use the Mingwang prayer beads to resist his primordial spirit secret technique. He had even predicted in advance that the incomplete Mingwang prayer beads would not be able to resist his Yuan spirit secret technique at all. However, he had miscalculated. Suddenly, he realized that the Mingwang prayer beads on Suzumo's left wrist were intact. Boom! The arrow collided against the golden light shield with a deafening sound. The golden light shield trembled violently. In the blink of an eye, cracks appeared on its surface. Snap! Immediately after, the golden light shield shattered. As for the primordial spirit arrow that pierced over, it had already dissipated in the violent collision as well. Tianji retracted his smile and narrowed his gaze deeply at Suzumo. Grabbing the immortal sword beside him, he transformed into a streak of light and sped into the distance. Tianji did not choose to continue fighting with Suzumo. Instead, he escaped with Immortal Sword. His escape technique was much faster than Immortal Sword's sword escape technique. Frowning, Suzumo looked at the 2 of them leaving and did not chase after them. The monk that appeared later had a mysterious background. His combat strength was strong, and his movement technique was shockingly fast. Given Suzumo's speed, he might not be able to catch up even if he gave chase. Furthermore, Yen Beichen was severely injured and was still in the bamboo forest behind him. If he gave chase for too long, Suzumo would be worried about Yen Beichen. Suzumo knew very well that someone like Yen Beichen might seem cold and heartless, but once he fell in love, he would definitely be extremely devoted. This change in events was too great a blow for Yen Beichen. Although he was indignant, Suzumo still decided to turn around and check on Yen Beichen. Before long, Suzumo returned to the bamboo forest. Yen Beichen was kneeling beside Qin Pianran's corpse with his head lowered motionlessly. His expression was blank, and his gaze was empty. If it was anyone else, they would have screamed hysterically and broken down mentally. However, from the beginning to the end, Yen Beichen did not say a single word or shout. He merely looked at Qin Pianran silently. Suzumo accompanied him at the side, and could not bear to disturb him. However, he was truly worried when he looked at the silent Yen Beichen. Perhaps it would be better if Yen Beichen shouted or cried. The more silent Yen Beichen was, the more worried Suzumo was. Brother Yen, why don't you say something? Don't hold it in like that. Suzumo could not help but persuade. I'm fine. After a long time, Yen Beichen finally said those 3 words slowly with a hoarse and deep voice. Suzumo's expression relaxed slightly. All of a sudden, Yen Beichen opened his mouth and spat out a huge mouthful of blood. After spitting out that mouthful of blood, Yen Beichen's life force was clearly drained significantly. His head of black hair was rapidly turning gray at a speed visible to the naked eye. Extreme wisdom leads to injury, and deep emotions lead to death. If Yen Beichen continued like this, his lifespan would be severely reduced. Many scarlet bloodstains splattered onto Qin Pianran's fair cheeks. Yen Beichen tore apart his own clothes and gently and carefully wiped away the bloodstains on Qin Pianran's cheeks. The gentleness in Yen Beichen's eyes made Suzumo's heart feel stifled. Suzumo sighed inwardly and turned away. unable to bear to continue watching. Just like that, Yen Beichen knelt in front of Qin Pian Ran for an entire day and night. He did not leave even half a step. Or rather, his gaze was always on Qin Pian Ran, and did not leave him for even a moment. Su Zimo was worried in his heart, and also stood guard at the side. Morning. The sun rose. Su Zimo could not hold it in any longer. He walked forward, and took out the jade bottle of spirit medicine that he obtained from the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple from his storage bag. Initially, there were 2 9 Revolution Soul Return elixirs in the jade bottle. Just now, Su Zimo had consumed one before he chased after Immortal Sword. In fact, when he was chasing after the Immortal Sword, he had already felt a faint killing intent. It was a warning from his spirit perception, and was definitely not an illusion. At that time, Su Zimo's essence spirit had already become extremely weak after releasing 3 heaven and earth dharma characteristics, and hundreds of heaven-slaying sword chi. That was the reason why he chased, after consuming a 9 Revolution Soul Return elixir, and even released 2 essence spirit secret skills later on. Right now, there was only 1 9 Revolution Soul Return elixir left in the jade bottle. Yen Beichen's essence spirit was injured to begin with. In this battle, he was severely injured by Immortal Sword and suffered such a blow. If he did not consume the 9 Revolution Soul Return elixir, it would be difficult for his essence spirit to recover. Brother Yen, consume this elixir first. Su Zimo handed the 9 Revolution Soul Return elixir over and said softly. Yen Beichen received it expressionlessly. Su Zimo felt slightly relieved. As long as Yen Beichen consumed the 9 Revolution Soul Return elixir, he would at least be able to survive. Before that thought was completed, Yen Beichen crushed it with 2 fingers. Instantly, the 9 Revolution Soul Return elixir turned into powder and scattered into the mud. Chapter 1282. Brother Yen. Su Zimo turned pale with fright. The 9 Revolution Soul Return elixir was extremely precious, and he had narrowly escaped death in order to obtain it. If not for a freak combination of factors, he would have become a corpse in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple as well. However, Yen Beichen crushed such an elixir casually. Brother Yen, why do you have to sigh? Su Zimo sighed. Of course, he could understand Yen Beichen's actions after encountering such a change. Even if the 9 Revolution Soul Return elixir shattered, he could think of ways to search for it. Tianhuang mainland was boundless, and there were countless ancient ruins. He would definitely be able to find another one. Pian Ran is already dead. What's the point of this elixir to me? Yen Beichen looked at Qin Pian Ran's face in a daze and said calmly. When he heard that, Su Zimo was shocked. The reason why Yen Beichen crushed the 9 Revolution Soul Return elixir was because he was already prepared to die. Brother Yen, now that things have come to this, you have to take good care of yourself. If fellow Taoist Qin knows about this in the netherworld, she definitely wouldn't want you to continue sinking like this. Su Zimo consoled softly with worry in his heart. That's right. Yen Beichen said. Before Pian Ran left, she told me to be well. But how can I? Without Pian Ran, how can I live alone in this world? Suddenly, Yen Beichen's expression turned extremely pained as he hammered the ground repeatedly with his fists, causing mud to fly everywhere. I hate it. I hate it so much. Yen Beichen reared his head and howled into the skies. His eyes were bloodshot as he let out a tragic howl. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying power emanated from Yen Beichen's body. That power was familiar, and even Su Zimo felt his heart skip a beat. Immediately after, the ground beneath Su Zimo's feet trembled. This scene was as if something extremely terrifying had been alarmed, awakened, and was rushing out from the depths of the earth. Su Zimo's expression changed. He suddenly thought of an ancient demonic creature. Boom! Right at this moment, the ground not far away suddenly cracked open. A black shadow soared into the sky, emitting billowing demonic chi as if it wanted to devour the world. Su Zimo's eyes narrowed. Hatred Devil Saber. That ancient fiend saber was the most terrifying weapon Su Zimo had ever seen up till this point of his cultivation. Who would have thought that the ancient demonic saber would have such intelligence? It had sensed the enormous hatred in Yen Beichen's body, and decided to come out on its own. Clang clang clang. The blade of the hatred demon saber trembled continuously. Su Zimo could actually feel the joy and excitement of a living being from this ancient demonic saber. Whoosh! The hatred fiend saber turned into a black shadow that emitted a chilling light. It carried a monstrous demonic aura and stabbed towards Yen Beichen. Watch out! Su Zimo hollered and attacked brazenly. He summoned the creation lotus platform and smashed it towards the hatred fiend saber. Boom! The azure light and the pitch-black demonic shadow collided, and an earth-shattering explosion erupted. A gigantic semicircular halo of power burst forth from the point of collision of the two weapons and spread wildly in all directions. Against the impact of that power, Su Zimo lost his footing and was sent flying. The creation lotus platform fell to the side as well. Su Zimo was shocked. Even in the hands of Tao Lord Hatred, this ancient fiend saber did not release such terrifying power. After flying more than 100 feet away, Su Zimo ignored the pain in his body and struggled to stand up hurriedly, looking in the direction of Yen Beichen. Immediately, Su Zimo's expression changed starkly. The hatred fiend saber had already pierced towards Yen Beichen's chest and entered instantly. Exclamation point. The hatred fiend saber pierced Yen Beichen's chest, and a bloodied blade was revealed from his back. Brother Yen! Su Zimo exclaimed and wanted to charge forward. The power of his essence spirit was almost depleted after his battle with the mortal sword and cloud rain. However, even if he had to risk his life, he could not let anything happen to Yen Beichen. Don't come over! Right then Yen Beichen roared. Su Zimo stopped in his tracks. Yen Beichen had a pained expression, and his features were scrunched together. He was in so much pain that his body was trembling. However, he grit his teeth and said, "Again? It's not painful enough!" Exclamation point. The moment he said that, the hatred fiend saber withdrew itself and pierced Yen Beichen's chest with another slash. Alright again! Yen Beichen roared. Poof! Another slash. This slash pierced Yen Beichen's abdomen. Good. Yen Beichen roared with laughter as though he had gone mad. Again. Each time the hatred fiend saber stabbed, Yen Beichen's body would tremble in pain. However, there was a look of relief in his eyes instead. Su Zimo watched everything in a daze. He finally understood why Yen Beichen did not allow him to advance. That was because Yen Beichen was using this method to torture him. It was to resolve the pain in his heart. Perhaps that was the only way to alleviate the pain in his heart. Poof! 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 In the blink of an eye, Yen Beichen had already been stabbed dozens of times. Bloody wounds lined his body in a shocking manner, and his chest was almost pierced through by the hatred fiend saber. There was another reason why Su Zimo did not go forward to stop him. That was because he was shocked to discover that Yen Beichen's heart had already shattered after being stabbed so many times, and he had lost a lot of blood qi. However, the life force in his body did not weaken at all. Instead, it flourished. His power of blood qi was rising rapidly. An extremely terrifying power gradually awakened, sprouted and strengthened within Yen Beichen's body. Balls of pitch-black fiend qi were born within Yen Beichen's body. They turned increasingly dense and terrifying as they enveloped his body. The blood vessels in Yen Beichen's eyes had already turned black. His eyes turned as black as ink, like two enormous black holes. The hatred in them seemed to be able to devour everything. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He could clearly see that Yen Beichen's wounds were healing at a visible speed under the shroud of the rumbling fiend qi. Finally, the hatred fiend saber stopped. It stood in front of Yen Beichen. The ancient fiend saber was tainted with Yen Beichen's endless blood. At that moment, the aura it emitted had already fused with Yen Beichen. The hatred fiend saber had already acknowledged its master through blood. Yen Beichen's consciousness seemed to be out of his control as well. He reached out and gripped the hilt of the hatred fiend saber with both hands. Rumbling fiend qi spread from the saber and surged into his body. The fiend qi formed dark, sinister and cold runes in midair. Every single rune exuded a torrential hatred. He hated the heavens and hated the earth. His hatred was endless and boundless. Eventually, all of those runes surged into Yen Beichen's body. When he saw that, Su Zimo finally understood something. Why did he not find the Hatred Sutra in Tao Lord Hatred's storage bag back then? It was not because the Hatred Sutra was destroyed by Tao Lord Hatred, but because it was in the Hatred Fiend Saber. One would only be qualified to cultivate the number 1 fiend technique of the ancient era after obtaining the recognition of the Hatred Fiend Saber. Chapter 1283. The Hatred Fiend Saber was once the weapon of the ancient fiend Emperor Hatred. The ancient fiend saber contained an extremely terrifying power, and Tao Lord Hatred did not release it completely. But now that power could finally see the light of day once more. The changes that this power brought to Yan Beichen were not limited to his blood qi and body. Endless fiend qi surged into Yan Beichen's consciousness, encircled his essence spirit. The wounds on his essence spirit were healing rapidly as well. Su Zimo was both happy and worried when he sensed the changes in Yan Beichen's body. He was happy that the Hatred Fiend Saber had acknowledged him as its master. At the very least, Yan Beichen's life was not in danger, and the injuries to his essence spirit were resolved. However, he was worried because no one knew what Yan Beichen would become after inheriting the legacy of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. About 2 hours later, Yan Beichen's essence spirit had recovered. This speed was even faster than consuming the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir. The power contained within the Hatred Fiend Saber came from the ancient Fiend Emperor after all. With the recovery of his essence spirit, Yan Beichen's aura rose rapidly with the support of that massive power. In less than an hour there was a boom. Yan Beichen shuddered and his cultivation realm rose by a level. He entered the Dharma characteristic realm 20 years ago. Later on, his essence spirit was injured and his cultivation realm remained at the early stage Dharma characteristic realm. In less than an hour, he was already at the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. However, the trend of his breakthrough did not stop. 2 hours later, Yan Beichen broke through once more. Late-stage Dharma characteristic realm. Back when Tao Lord Hatred obtained this ancient fiend saber, he only inherited the Hatred Sutra, but did not inherit the power of the fiend saber. That was because Tao Lord Hatred did not truly obtain the recognition of the Hatred Fiend Saber. However, Yan Beichen was different. Yan Beichen had completely inherited the Hatred Fiend Saber. He was the master that the Hatred Fiend Saber took the initiative to acknowledge. When night fell, Yan Beichen broke through once more. Perfected Dharma characteristic realm. From the initial transcendence realm to the perfected transcendence realm, it only took a day. Since ancient times, there was probably no one who could match this speed. Such a fortuitous encounter could definitely be said to be unparalleled in history. However, Su Zimo sighed softly in his heart. There was not the slightest bit of envy in his eyes. Instead, there was deep sympathy. To others, such a fortuitous encounter was something they could only wish for. However, he knew very well that if Yan Beichen was given a choice, he would rather have his primordial spirit never recover than have such a fortuitous encounter. That was because it was the death of his loved one that triggered the hatred in his heart and caused the Hatred Demonic Saber to recognize him as its master. Yan Beichen's injuries to his primordial spirit had already healed. However, the wound in his heart would probably never heal. After entering the perfected transcendence realm, Yan Beichen's aura gradually stabilized. After all, there was a qualitative change in strength between the major realms of cultivation. There was an unimaginable barrier between them. The fact that the power of the Hatred Demonic Saber could allow Yan Beichen to break through to the perfected transcendence realm within a day was already the limit. In the blink of an eye, the night passed. Yan Beichen sat there motionlessly and gripped the Hatred Demonic Saber with both hands. His eyes were pitch black without any whites, and his grayish-white hair swayed gently. For the entire day and night, Su Zimo stood beside him without taking a single step away. In fact, he did not even cultivate to recuperate. He merely ate a few elixirs casually and guarded Yan Beichen, afraid that something would happen to Yan Beichen. The sun rose. A warm glow shone on Yan Beichen's face. All of a sudden, Yan Beichen's expression changed and the black in his fiend eyes gradually faded, revealing the whites of his eyes and returning to normal. "Brother Yan." Su Zimo tried calling out softly. "I'm fine," Yan Beichen said slowly with a calm expression. Zimo heaved a sigh of relief. Initially, he was worried that Yen Beichen would turn into a completely different person after inheriting the legacy of the hatred demonic saber, similar to the possibility of being possessed. But now, it seemed like Yen Beichen still remembered him at the very least. Of course, Zimo could vaguely sense that Yen Beichen was indeed different from before. At the very least, Yen Beichen did not have the same will to die as he did just now. Hatred is right, suddenly Yen Beichen said. It's impossible for me to live a peaceful life with Pian Ran. I'm the Shura, and my hands are stained with endless blood. I'll never be able to leave the cultivation world. Zimo was silent. Before Tao Lord Hatred died, he said something that unexpectedly turned into a prophecy. Today I Li Hen can find you. Tomorrow, there will be others. Shura, you can forget about leaving the cultivation world and have peace. Tao Lord Hatred's words came true. Immortal Sword had indeed found him. I was too naive. Yen Beichen smiled with a mocking expression. I actually thought that I could truly extricate myself from worldly affairs and stay away from conflict and killing. It's all my fault for Pian Ran's death. I'm the Shura who attained the Tao through killing. Since I've chosen this path, there's no turning back. I was the one who caused Pian Ran's death. I shouldn't have fallen for her. Those words came out of Yen Beichen's mouth calmly. However, Zimo knew that every single word was like a sharp thorn that stabbed Yen Beichen's chest repeatedly. Hugging Qin Pian Ran's cold corpse, Yen Beichen stood up slowly and arrived at the crack where the hatred demonic saber was born. Pian Ran, don't worry. I won't let off anyone who hurt you this time round. I'll make them pay 10 times, 100 times the price. I'm going to turn Sword Sect into rivers of blood. Yen Beichen's tone was filled with endless killing intent. It was cold and sinister, causing one to shudder. Zimo knew. Shura was back. To be precise, the true Shura had just descended into this world. The current Shura was several times stronger than the former titular disciple, Yen Beichen. Yen Beichen no longer had any weaknesses. He had nothing to worry about, and would no longer fall for her. What was even more frightening was that Yen Beichen had inherited the legacy of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. Shura's Tao. The Tao of Hatred. No one knew what realm Shura, who cultivated the Hatred Sutra and wielded the Hatred Demonic Saber, would reach. Zimo could not imagine it either. Perhaps, he was even scarier than the ancient Fiend Emperor Hatred. Yen Beichen looked deeply at Qin Pian Ran with endless reluctance and longing in his eyes before he hardened his heart and released his grip. Qin Pian Ran's corpse fell into the dark abyss of the crevice and gradually disappeared. From this day forth, there's only Shura left in this world and no Yen Beichen. Yen Beichen said and waved his sleeves gently. Rumble. Boom. The crack on the ground healed slowly against his powerful dermic powers. In the blink of an eye, the crack was restored to its original state. It was as though Yen Beichen had already accompanied Qin Pian Ran to be buried in this abyss. Zimo, I'm leaving. Shura leaped up. Brother Yen, where are you going? Zimo's heart tightened as he asked hurriedly. He was afraid that Yen Beichen would be muddle-headed and charge into Sword Sect in a moment of passion. It was true that Shura had obtained the legacy of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. However, he was only at the Dharma characteristic realm after all. If he charged into Sword Sect, he would only be suppressed mercilessly by the experts of Sword Sect. Don't worry, I won't be rash, Shura said without turning back and disappeared quickly. Chapter 1284. Enigma Palace, Heavenly Secrets Tao Residence. 2 figures flashed and Heavenly Secrets returned to his Tao residence with Immortal Sword. Immortal Sword's face was pale as he panted slightly. His eyes were filled with endless hatred as he grit his teeth. Araki Takashi, I'm absolutely irreconcilable with you. Although he was saved by Heavenly Secrets this time round, his essence spirit was injured. It was extremely difficult to recover from injuries to the essence spirit. Even with Sword Sect's foundation, they did not have an elixir similar to the 9 Revolutions Soul Return elixir. Initially, they were determined to kill Shura. To think that a single Tao Lord Araki Takashi would disrupt their plans. Heavenly Secrets said indifferently, actually, you don't have to be too angry. At the very least, Shura is crippled and your goal has been achieved. That's right. That bastard Qin Pian Ran is dead as well. Immortal Sword nodded. After a brief pause, Immortal Sword turned and asked, Brother Heavenly Secrets, do you have the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir? If you do, I can get you any treasure you want. I'm sorry, Heavenly Secrets smiled apologetically. Immortal Sword's gaze dimmed, and his expression darkened once more. A hint of mockery flashed through the depths of Heavenly Secrets' eyes. Notwithstanding the fact that he did not have the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir on him. Even if he did, he would definitely not hand it over to Immortal Sword. At most, he and Immortal Sword were merely making use of each other. Furthermore, Immortal Sword was a petty and ungrateful person. Even if Heavenly Secrets gave him the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir, he would not remember the favor. So what if it was Qin Pian Ran? He was still killed mercilessly. Tao Lord Cloud Rain had known him for so many years, but he was schemed against and died as well. A moment later, Immortal Sword asked in a seemingly casual manner, By the way, why did you arrive so coincidentally, Brother Heavenly Secrets? Initially, there was nothing wrong with your trip according to my divination. That was the reason why I did not follow you, Heavenly Secrets said. However, not long after, I divined again and realized that the trajectory of the matter had suddenly turned blurry. I realized that an unforeseen event might have occurred. Thus, I immediately set off. Although Heavenly Secrets' expression was warm, and he explained patiently, he sneered internally. He could tell that Immortal Sword already had some resentment towards him. Immortal Sword continued, Brother Heavenly Secrets, Araki Takashi is already exhausted. His combat strength has decreased sharply after releasing Essence Spirit Secret skills consecutively. Why didn't you take advantage of such a rare opportunity to kill him? I can't kill him. Tianji was not the least bit impatient. He shook his head and said, With my skills, I can indeed defeat Araki Takashi easily. However, it's impossible to kill him. Araki Takashi knows many kinds of escape techniques. If he sees that the situation is not right, he can use this escape technique and escape far away. I won't be able to catch up. In addition, Araki Takashi has already detected my presence. His senses are too sharp. Bang! Immortal Sword slammed his fist on the stone table beside him to vent the anger in his heart. Gritting his teeth, he said, If I miss this opportunity, it'll be difficult for me to kill Araki Takashi again. Araki Takashi has cultivated 3 heaven and earth dharma characteristics, and each of them is 87 feet tall. However, he's only at the mid-stage dharma characteristic realm. If he advances to the conjoint body realm, only Mahayana patriarchs will be able to suppress him. At the conjoint body realm, one had to fuse their heaven and earth dharma characteristics into their bodies. If Araki Takashi were to advance to the conjoint body realm and cultivate 3 heaven and earth dharma characteristics, how strong would his combat strength be after fusing them into his body? Heavenly Secrets was neither anxious nor frustrated when he heard Immortal Sword's complaints. He said indifferently, There might be a chance. Oh, Immortal Sword raised his brow and asked instead, What do you mean? Heavenly Secrets said, There's still 100 years before the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking. You mean? Immortal Sword pondered for a moment before shaking his head. What kind of chance is that? Given Araki Takashi's current combat strength, it's enough for him to become the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking. Furthermore, Araki Takashi has a Mahayana patriarch backing him. With such a huge commotion during the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking, there's no guarantee that the patriarch won't appear. At that time, who would dare to touch him? Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently. According to my calculations, that person in Dragon Burial Valley won't live for more than 100 years. Immortal Sword shook his head. Even so, the 4 unorthodox groups, Snowdrift Valley, Depamkara Monastery, and some other super sects are on good terms with him. It's impossible for them to kill Araki Takashi in front of everyone. Prior to this, those super sects could still claim that Araki Takashi was a fiend demon and kill Araki Takashi in the name of slaying demons. But now that reason had turned into a joke. Immortal Sword continued, Furthermore, given Araki Takashi's capabilities, even conjoint body mighty figures won't be able to stop him if he wants to escape. Hold on, There'll definitely be a chance. Heavenly Secrets narrowed his eyes and said meaningfully. Right then, Heavenly Secrets' expression changed as though he sensed something. Waving his sleeves, the doors of the Dao residence opened, and a messenger spirit crane flew in. This messaging spirit crane looked extremely strange. Its eyes were dark green, and emitted a gloomy aura. One of the 9 races, the Witch race? Immortal Sword frowned slightly. Only the Witch race possessed a spirit crane as such. Tianji instructed the spirit crane, before releasing it back into the spirit crane. Before long, a few cultivators arrived at the entrance of the Heavenly Secrets Dao residence. Draped in green robes and wide hoods, they walked in. So it's Elder Wuxia. Please forgive me for not going out to welcome you. Heavenly Secrets cupped his fists and said with a smile. You're welcome, fellow Taoist Heavenly Secrets. The leader of the green-robed cultivators said slowly, and took off the hood on his head, revealing a skinny old face with sparse hair and ghastly green eyes. This is Immortal Sword, a titular disciple of Sword sect who is now at the conjoint body realm. This is Elder Wuxia of the Witch race. Heavenly Secrets introduced both parties briefly. I've long heard of your name. Wuxia smiled gently and his eyes flickered. Suddenly he said, fellow Taoist Immortal Sword's essence spirit seems to be injured. Elder, you have sharp eyes. Immortal Sword's expression darkened as he said hatefully. To be honest, Elder, my essence spirit was injured by an enemy. If he were to tell the truth, he could not afford to lose to a Dharma Daojuan's essence spirit. Elder Wuxia, why are you here? Heavenly Secrets did not exchange pleasantries with Wuxia, and asked straightforwardly. I would like to ask you to help me find someone, Wuxia said in a deep voice. There are many secret skills of the Witch race, and many methods to deduce people. Why are you looking for me? Heavenly Secrets chuckled and did not comment. I did use the secret skills of the Witch race, but I couldn't find him. Wuxia shook his head. Oh, Heavenly Secrets narrowed his eyes and asked. What's the background of someone that even the secret skills of the Witch race can't find? To be precise, he's not alone. Wuxia flipped his palm, and a black scale was placed on it. What's this? Immortal Sword frowned slightly. The black scale emitted an extremely frightening aura that resembled demonic chi, but was slightly different. Fiend demon? What fiend demon was worthy of the Witch race mobilizing so many people to look for Enigma Palace? Heavenly Secrets swept his gaze and received the scale with a grim expression. After staring at it for a moment, his expression changed starkly as he exclaimed, a primordial taboo. Chapter 1285. When he heard the words primordial taboo, Immortal Sword could not help but gasp, and his expression changed starkly. This it's still alive? Immortal Sword's voice was trembling. The primordial taboo was a taboo for any sect or faction. Apart from some super sects and ancient aristocratic families with long legacies, most sects and cultivators had not even heard of it. In the records of those super sects, it was an extremely terrifying existence that could be called the god of massacre of the primordial era. There was nothing it did not kill, and nothing it did not eat. In fact, it could even slay dragons. Its status was even above the 9 races. Legend has it that an earth-shaking battle broke out in the primordial era, because the 10,000 races, led by the 9 races, fought against the primordial taboo. In that battle, countless living beings died. It was unknown how many races had been annihilated forever, becoming extinct. The primordial 9 races were also severely injured because of that, and the human race took advantage of the situation to rise later on. They fought against the 9 races and suppressed them. If not for the battle of the primordial era, it would have been difficult for the human race to win the ancient war. The human race had a deep fear towards the primordial 9 races. After all, they were enslaved for countless years, and that fear was deeply rooted. However, the primordial taboo was an existence that was even more terrifying than the primordial 9 races. One could imagine how shocked Immortal Sword was when he heard the words primordial taboo. Sensing Immortal Sword's fear, Wuxia's eyes flashed with mockery. Fellow Taoist, there's no need to panic. I've deduced that this thing's cultivation is only at the Dharma characteristic realm. At that point, Heavenly Secrets' expression softened. It was nothing if it was only at the Dharma characteristic realm. As long as they sent out enough conjoint body mighty figures, they would be able to suppress it. At the very least, they could invite a half-martial ancestor. However, Wuxia changed the topic and said, if you give it enough time and wait for it to grow, hee. At that time, Tianhuang mainland will be flooded with blood. None of the super sects of the human race will be spared. Heavenly Secrets said in a deep voice. Since it's a primordial taboo, I'm afraid it can sense its location if I use a secret skill to deduce it. It's fine as long as there are clues, Wuxia said coldly. Don't worry. The witch race isn't the only one from the primordial 9 races that has come with the appearance of this taboo. The other primordial races have sent experts as well. If we join forces, as long as we can determine its location, we will definitely be able to suppress it. Let me try. Tianji cast a spell and activated his primordial spirit. A ray of divine light spread out and landed on the black scale in his palm. He began to deduce. A moment later, Heavenly Secrets shuddered and could not help but grunt. Amazing! Heavenly Secrets finally stopped smiling. This time, not only did he fail to deduce it, but a single scale almost caused his origin spirit to suffer a backlash. Heavenly Secrets took a deep breath of air and channeled his secret skill once more. A layer of gray mist covered his eyes as he gripped the black scale and continued to deduce. Gradually, a trace of blood appeared in the gray fog of Heavenly Secrets' eyes. As time passed, his body began to tremble even more violently. Finally, the gray fog in Tianji's eyes dissipated. His face was pale as he panted heavily. He loosened his grip, and the black scale fell to the ground. It's in the middle continent. Heavenly Secrets withdrew a map of the middle continent from his storage bag and panted. I can't deduce its exact location. I can only give a rough estimate. It's around here, within a radius of 500 kilometers. Heavenly Secrets pointed to a sex symbol on the map and said in a deep voice. Elixir Yang sect? Immortal Sword looked at the map and murmured softly. All right. The green light in Wuxia's eyes shone brightly as he said coldly. There's no time to lose. I'll inform the other primordial races right now and head over immediately. Heavenly Secrets, you have to follow us and deduce its location at all times. Wuxia said. I can't take it anymore. Heavenly Secrets shook his head. The deduction this time round has already drained me mentally. I'll have to rest for at least a year before I can recover. All right, let's go first. Wuxia did not linger and left immediately. Middle Continent Elixir Yang sect. Night Spirit, come and take a look. I've refined the Great Essence Creation Elixir. In an elixir workshop, Xiaoning pinched an elixir and said happily to the cold Night Spirit beside her. This is the Great Essence Creation Elixir. Dharma characteristic cultivators can raise their cultivation realm by a minor realm after consuming one. Xiaoning continued. It's a pity that after refining for so long, only one of them was successful. However, it's fine. I'll refine it slowly. When the time comes, I'll take one and Big Brother will take one. Night Spirit, take one as well, and see if there's any effect. Night Spirit's lips curled as he nodded. All of a sudden, Night Spirit's expression changed slightly as he frowned, as though he sensed something. Xiaoning was immersed in the joy of successfully refining the Great Essence Creation Elixir, and did not notice anything amiss with Night Spirit. Xiaoning, I have something on. I've got to go. Right then Night Spirit suddenly said, go ahead. Just come back early. Xiaoning waved it off and said with a smile. Night Spirit remained silent for a long time before saying, This is a little troublesome. I might have to be gone for a longer time. Xiaoning could tell that something was amiss from Night Spirit's tone and asked, How long will it take? I don't know either. It might be 10 or 100 years. In any case, you don't have to worry if I don't return, Night Spirit said. Do you need my help? Xiaoning asked gently. There's no need. Night Spirit shook his head and did not chat further with Xiaoning. Turning to leave, he disappeared from her sight before long. He's finally here. Outside Elixir Yang sect, Night Spirit murmured with a cold expression. In a flash, he disappeared into the voids like a phantom. At the same time, in the bamboo forest of the middle continent, Su Zimo sighed deeply as he watched Yin Beichen leave. The birth of the true Shura would definitely cause a bloodbath in Tianhuang mainland. None of the people and factions involved in this matter would be spared. Su Zimo's gaze shifted to Dao Lord Cloud Rain's corpse, and he removed his storage bag. As the titular disciple of Cloud Rain sect, Dao Lord Cloud Rain did not know what treasures he would have in his storage bag. Su Zimo opened the storage bag and swept his gaze. There were quite a number of cultivation techniques and secret skills inside. However, they were all techniques that allowed one to conjure clouds and rain, and were not orthodox. Su Zimo could not be bothered to cultivate them either. There were also some supreme grade and perfect grade dermic weapons inside. Su Zimo put them all away. What truly lit up his eyes was an elixir. There was a great essence creation elixir in Dao Lord Cloud Rain's storage bag. Back in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, all of them fell into an illusion and saw a great essence creation elixir. That was not an illusion. It was a true ancient elixir. Right now, he was at the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. If he consumed the great essence creation elixir here, he could break through to the late-stage Dharma characteristic realm rapidly. At that time, his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic would grow once more. Chapter 1286. Pingyang Town. Not long ago, Su Zimo's true body, also known as Wu Dao's true body, had returned from Misty Peak. He had already memorized all the cultivation techniques and secret skills in Misty Peak. In the familiar courtyard, the true body sat beneath the peach blossom tree, and could not help but recall that night many years ago when a woman in blood-red robes stood here, and led him into cultivation under the hazy moonlight. Everything felt like a lifetime ago. The true body gradually closed his eyes. He was prepared to break through his core formation and enter the next realm. After forming a core, be it the cultivation of the immortal Buddhist, fiend or demon race, all of them led to the same goal: to make use of the qualitative change of the Jin Dan to communicate with heaven and earth, and condense an essence spirit. It was the same for Wu Dao. The true body named the next realm as the martial spirit realm. Wu Dao's essence spirit was his martial spirit. It corresponded to the Yin spirit realm of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, and the nascent soul realm of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend cultivation techniques. Of course, the true body continued to perfect Wu Dao and cultivate according to the martial sutra. As such, there were still some differences between his martial spirit and ordinary essence spirits. The true body sat motionlessly beneath the peach blossom tree, as though he was petrified. Gradually the true body stopped breathing. Momo waved her branches gently. If not for the fact that he could sense the life force within the true body, he would have thought that the true body had already passed away. The true body was formed from Wu Dao's Dao fruit. He was the one who created the martial sutra, and had already cultivated to the 9th transformation of Wu Dao's 9 transformations. The power of Dragon Elephant. The true body had never fought with anyone, and no one knew his combat strength. To put it simply, Su Zimo, who cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness back when he was at the Jin Dan realm, could not compare to the true body in terms of physique and blood qi. No one, not even the true body, knew what the martial spirit formed from the inner core would look like after it broke through the voids. The true body was not unfamiliar with this process. Bang! 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 The true body's expression was unchanged, and he did not move on the surface. However, a deafening collision sound could be heard from within his body. The inner core charged through the voids repeatedly. There was a possibility of failure in this process. If the inner core was not strong enough, the breakthrough would fail. But to the original body, no void could stop the Niden that had cultivated to the Dracophant force. Not long after, the void barrier in his body was broken. His sea of consciousness appeared. The inner core rushed in and fused with the soul in the sea of consciousness, gradually forming a martial soul. The strange thing was that this martial spirit was not in the shape of a human. It was a ball of purple flames that emitted a terrifying aura. Tao Yao was originally guarding by the main body's side, but the moment the main body condensed the martial soul, Tao Yao felt a wave of fear, and he was frightened to the point of transforming into his human form. His figure flickered. and he hid in a corner of the courtyard with a bewildered expression. Even Momo, who was in the Transcendence realm, felt a sense of fear when facing the purple martial soul flame, cultivated by his true body. After a long time, the purple flame in his sea of consciousness kept changing and gradually took shape. His appearance was exactly the same as Su Zimo's, but his body was burning with a layer of purple flames. As expected, Lin Fan's true body opened his eyes slowly and nodded. His Wu Dao was extremely different from the cultivation of immortals, Buddhists and fiends, before they formed their cores. Immortals, Buddhists and fiends use their bodies to absorb the spirit qi of heaven and earth to cultivate. As for Wu Dao, he treated his body as a world and excavated the power within his body continuously. His true body deduced that if he could cultivate to Wu Dao's 9th transformation, before entering the martial spirit realm, there was a high chance that his martial soul would possess a type of power when it was first formed. That power was extremely broad and was closely related to the cultivator. It could be flames, weapons, ferocious beasts, or even a part of one's body. The martial soul condensed by his true body was born with a martial soul flame. Purple. It represented a saint, the aura of an emperor and supreme. The reason why his true body condensed a purple martial soul flame was because he was prepared to treat his body as a gigantic furnace in the latter half of the Martial Sutra. There was an ancient saying that heaven and earth were furnaces. All living things were copper, yin and yang were charcoal, and fate was the workmanship. His true body treated Wu Dao's true body as a furnace that nurtured all sutras into one and fused all dharmic arts into his body. He gathered the strongest flames in the world to refine it and create a true supreme Wu Dao. That martial soul flame was the foundation of Wu Dao's furnace. From now on, his true body did not have to refine any dharmic weapons. His body was Wu Dao's furnace, and that was his dharmic weapon. Swoosh! The moment the martial soul flame was formed, it had already begun burning Wu Dao's true body. At the same time, the martial soul flame began to refine all the cultivation techniques and secret skills that Su Zimo had browsed through all these years, be it those of the immortal, Buddhist, fiend, or demon race, were all refined by the martial soul flame. The cultivation techniques of Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery, Void Thunder Manual, Sea Calming Manual, Tidal Manual, the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness, more than 30 inheritances in the stone statue cemetery, endless cultivation techniques were all contained within the Wu Dao's furnace. It was constantly refined, deduced, and comprehended. All the profoundness and essence of these cultivation techniques were fused into Wu Dao's true body. The terrifying thing about Wu Dao's furnace was that there was no limit. As long as his true body obtained enough cultivation techniques, he could fuse them into Wu Dao's furnace and refine them into a power that he could control. In other words, every time he refined a cultivation technique or secret skill, his true body's strength would increase. Furthermore, under the continuous refinement of the martial soul flame, Wu Dao's true body would become stronger and more terrifying. There was no limit. What was even more terrifying was that his true body only controlled one martial soul flame. As the number of flames he controlled increased, the power of Wu Dao's furnace would naturally increase by several times as well. Of course, not every flame was qualified to become the flame that burned Wu Dao's furnace. If he wanted to refine the 100 sutras, burn Wu Dao's furnace, and refine Wu Dao's true body, it had to be the strongest flame in the world. The martial soul flame was only the first flame. Now that his cultivation path from now on was confirmed, his true body heaved a sigh of relief and continued cultivating. Wu Dao's furnace had just been formed and was still weak. It was not powerful enough and would require a long time to refine the 100 sutras and dharmic arts. At the same time, Qinglian's true body had already rushed back to the north region from the middle continent. Su Zimo was finally relieved when he sensed the situation of his true body. At that moment, Su Zimo had already consumed the great essence creation elixir, and his cultivation realm had risen to late-stage Dharma characteristic realm. This time round, he returned to the north region and was prepared to enter seclusion at Misty Peak. Although his trip to the middle continent was short, He gained quite a bit from the consecutive intense battles, and was prepared to make use of this seclusion to break through to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm as soon as possible. Right now, his 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics had already grown to a height of 89 feet. He was only a step away from a supreme Dharma characteristic. Of course, breaking through to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm was only one of his goals for this seclusion. Suzimo had another thought. Was a 90 feet supreme Dharma characteristic truly the limit? Chapter 1287. During this period of time, the cultivation world was not peaceful. The grand primordium ancient temple of the middle continent, Tao Lord Cloud Rain, and the death of a conjoint body mighty figure of Sword Sect caused quite a commotion. After Immortal Sword returned to Sword Sect, he released the news that Tao Lord Cloud Rain was killed by Araki Takashi. It was naturally beneficial for Immortal Sword to have Araki Takashi fall out with Cloud Rain sect. That news caused quite a stir in the cultivation world. Another titular disciple died in the hands of Araki Takashi. Before long, more news about Tao Lord Araki Takashi spread. It was no longer a secret that Araki Takashi had condensed 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Suzimo did not take those rumors to heart. He returned to Misty Peak and began a long period of seclusion cultivation. Cultivation knew no time. In the blink of an eye, 97 years had passed. This day, suddenly, a deafening bang sounded from a cave abode on Misty Peak. Boom! A terrifying aura burst forth, and Misty Peak trembled continuously with countless gravel rolling down. Even the cultivators in seclusion were alarmed and came out one after another. It's young master. Nian Chi stood in midair and looked at the cave abode. Before long, the skies above Misty Peak were filled with people from the Foundation Establishment realm to the Dharma characteristic realm. Could Elder Araki Takashi have broken through again? How many years has it been? Elder Araki Takashi's talent is way too terrifying. I've been stuck at the late-stage Dharma characteristic realm for 1,000 years, and I haven't improved at all. How can you compare to Elder Araki Takashi? In Misty Peak, Suzimo had long been appointed as an elder of the sect by the old immortal Crane. Most of the cultivators who joined Misty Peak had heard of the legends of Tao Lord Araki Takashi and came because of his reputation. Moreover, Suzimo had once spread half of the martial scripture throughout the world. Among all the cultivators of Wu Dao, Araki Takashi was the person they respected the most. It was Araki Takashi who gave the mortals without spiritual roots the opportunity to break free from the shackles of fate. They were no longer threatened by the fiendish demons and trampled on by the cultivators. This time, the tremor lasted for a long time before it slowly calmed down. After a while, a figure appeared at the entrance of the cave. Green robes, black hair. It was Tao Lord Araki Takashi Suzimo. Congratulations! Congratulations! In midair, many Misty Peak cultivators cupped their hands and congratulated him. Suzimo nodded and smiled. Sir, the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking will begin soon. You've already broken through to the Dharma characteristic realm. The top of the Dharma characteristic ranking will definitely be yours. Nian Chi said with a smile. She possessed the bloodline of the Protoss, and her cultivation speed was extremely fast. Right now, she was already at late-stage Dharma characteristic realm, and was only half a step away from perfected Dharma characteristic realm. The fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking? Suzimo murmured softly. Right then, Suzimo sensed something and his expression changed as he looked towards the west. Suzimo's expression changed as he opened his mouth slightly, a look of deep pain and reluctance flashing through his eyes. Sir, what's wrong? Nian Chi asked softly when she sensed that something was amiss with Suzimo's expression. Heis. Suzimo sighed deeply. I'll make a trip to the Dragon Burial Valley. Before he finished his sentence, he transformed into a streak of golden light and vanished from the skies above Misty Peak. Bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Suzimo descended and arrived before the old temple, pushing open the dilapidated door. Monk Yuanbei sat in front of the main hall with his legs crossed. He looked at Suzimo, who was at the door, with a benevolent smile. You're here, master. With a sorrowful expression, Su Zimo strode forward and knelt before Monk Yuanbei. Child, there's no need for that. Monk Yuanbei reached out with his skinny palm and caressed Su Zimo's forehead gently, saying gently, "Who doesn't die? I've lived for almost 100,000 years and have seen and experienced too much. It's enough." Monk Yuanbei's lifespan was up. "Master, look. The Mingwang prayer beads are complete." Su Zimo hurriedly took down the complete Mingwang prayer beads and placed them in front of Monk Yuanbei. "All right." Monk Yuanbei nodded with a relieved expression. There was no regret, reluctance or longing in Monk Yuanbei's eyes. They were calm as water. "I heard that you've already condensed 3 heaven and earth dharma characteristics. How far have you cultivated them? Have you cultivated a supreme dharma characteristic? Remember to visit Mingzhen at Dipankara Temple in the southern region if you have the chance. I wonder how that child is doing now." Monk Yuanbei chatted with Su Zimo about trivial matters without any melancholy of parting. Gradually, Monk Yuanbei fell silent. There was no earth-shattering phenomenon or any phenomenon. Monk Yuanbei left calmly and quietly. He still had a benevolent and gentle smile on his face. However, that pair of wise and far-sighted eyes would never open again. The patriarch of a generation had a lifespan of 100,000 years. Yet he could not escape the pursuit of time and passed away here. Swoosh! The sound of chains could be heard from the backyard of the main hall. A tall and mighty figure walked over with scarlet hair that resembled flames. Before Monk Yuanbei left, the red-headed ghost did not appear. It was not that the red-headed ghost had any resentment towards Monk Yuanbei. On the contrary, the red-headed ghost and Monk Yuanbei had a deep relationship. Su Zimo understood that the red-headed ghost was just unwilling to see Monk Yuanbei leave with his own eyes and experience the sadness of parting. Now that the old bald monk is gone, it's time for me to leave as well. It was rare for the red-headed ghost to not make a fuss inside. Actually, the chains on his body had long shattered, and he was not the culprit of Great Qian's calamity. He could have left long ago. However, he remained here until Monk Yuanbei passed away. "Let's bury him here," the red-headed ghost said. Su Zimo nodded and carried Monk Yuanbei's corpse to the cemetery behind the main hall, burying him. Su Zimo placed all the ancient books in the old temple into his storage bag, prepared to bring them back to Misty Peak, above the Dragon Burial Valley. "You're returning to the dragons?" Su Zimo asked. The red-headed ghost nodded. "Without my protection, you have to be careful from now on. Don't act rashly. I'm leaving." The red-headed ghost waved and turned to leave. All of a sudden, he frowned slightly and turned around slowly, looking at the void not far away with a focused gaze and deep thought. "What's wrong?" Su Zimo asked instinctively. "Nothing. Just now, I seem to have sensed something." The red-headed ghost shook his head and mumbled, "Perhaps I'm a little crazy after staying at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for too long." With that said, the red-headed ghost leaped away and disappeared above the Dragon Burial Valley before long. Su Zimo stood at the edge of the Dragon Burial Valley for a long time before sighing deeply and turning to leave. Not long after he left, the void not far away from the Dragon Burial Valley suddenly distorted, and a figure appeared. The red-headed ghost's senses were right. There was indeed a person there. However, that person managed to deceive him. That person wore a wide plain robe, and his black hair covered most of his face, revealing only a single eye. He looked at the Dragon Burial Valley with a complicated expression. After standing there for a long time, the figure bowed deeply in the direction of the Dragon Burial Valley and turned to leave. Chapter 1288. West region of Tianhuang mainland. As far as the eye could see, the desert was vast and uninhabited. Occasionally, there would be some sand dunes that were devoid of life. In the cultivation world, there were many sections. Most of them were located in the Middle Continent, East region, North region and South region. However, there were very few cultivators who established their sects in the West region. In the depths of the West region, hundreds of figures stood in a desert in the far west, all of them with powerful auras. Among them, there were even dozens of figures whose auras were fused with the entire world and were indistinguishable. Although their auras were different, all of them emitted terrifying might. The dozens of figures were all conjoint body mighty figures. The rest were Dharma Daojun as well. The most frightening thing was that most of the hundreds of figures were aberrant living beings. Some of them were ugly with green faces and fangs. Their noses were raised, and they had sharp nails on their fingers and toes that were curved and shone with a cold glint. Those living beings were tall and had dark skin. They had gigantic pitch-black flesh wings on their backs that were dozens of feet wide when they were fully spread. Those living beings were no humans. They were more like malevolent ghosts from hell. One of the primordial 9 races, the Rakshasa race. This was a race that was even more terrifying than the malevolent ghosts of hell. Although some of them were in human form, they wore green robes and had dark green eyes. They emitted a sinister aura and exuded a sinister aura, exuding a sinister aura. One of the primordial 9 races, the witch race. There were also figures that were neither human nor demon. They resembled plants that were rooted in the depths of the desert and waved dozens of scarlet vines. There was a blood-red gourd on each vine. The most frightening thing was that there was a human face at the top of the vines. It had no eyes or nose, only a gigantic mouth with layers of sharp fangs that shone with a cold glint. Any living being that was devoured would be minced instantly. One of the primordial 9 races, the blood vine race. There were also figures that resembled crows. However, they were extremely massive and had golden feathers all over their bodies. They burned with golden flames and had 3 legs beneath them. Even the void around his body was being burned until it was slightly distorted. One of the primordial 9 races, the golden crow race. There were also some cultivators with blonde hair and blue eyes. The men were handsome and tall while the women were graceful and charming. It was obvious that they were Protoss. Some of the other figures were similar to humans. However, there was a blood mark on the foreheads of those cultivators that resembled an eye. One of the 9 clans, the Heavenly Eye clan. Among the hundreds of figures, 6 of the primordial 9 races had arrived. Shamans, Rakshasa, Protoss, Golden Crow, Bloodvine, and Heavenly Eye. Ever since the ancient war, the primordial 9 races were relegated to a corner and rarely stepped foot into Tianhuang mainland. There had never been such a huge movement. The primordial 6 races had all appeared, and even the weakest among them was at the Dharma characteristic realm. There were even dozens of conjoint body mighty figures. The primordial 6 races were alarmed and mobilized such a huge force, just for the terrifying living being sprawled on the ground motionlessly not far away. This creature was 100 feet tall. Its entire body was black and covered in scales. However, the tail behind it was purple. Its tailbone was sharp and seemed to be able to pierce through all living things. If Su Zimo was here, he would definitely recognize that this living being was the Night Spirit in its true form. At that moment, Night Spirit's aura was weak, and he was covered in wounds. He had already fainted, and the purple flames burning beneath his feet were extinguished. Right now, Night Spirit was only at the Dharma characteristic realm, and could kill conjoint body mighty figures of the human race, without the need to revert to his true form. If he reverted to his true form, he could even kill someone from the primordial 9 races, in a one-on-one fight. However, no matter how strong Night Spirit was, he could not withstand the encirclement of so many primordial races. All these years, he fought as he fled and hid everywhere. In the end, he was still suppressed here by the experts of the primordial 6 races. It's all thanks to everyone's teamwork that we were able to capture this beast this time round. Wuxia surveyed his surroundings and nodded in gratitude. That beast sure knows how to escape. A conjoint body Rakshasa named Feng Tian cursed with a furious expression. It's been more than 90 years since we set off to kill him. As expected of a taboo race, over the years, more than 10 conjoint body mighty figures of the primordial 6 races have died in the hands of that beast. A Protoss harumphed coldly with killing intent in his eyes. This time round, the primordial 6 races sent experts to kill Night Spirit, and only succeeded today. Over the years, they had also paid an extremely heavy price. More than 10 conjoint body mighty figures of the primordial 6 races died in the hands of Night Spirit. There were more than 100 Dharma Daojun. Third Prince, you came all the way from Penglai of the East Ocean to help us kill this beast. You're truly much stronger than the dragons, barbarians, and Kuan races. Wuxia looked at a three-legged golden crow not far away and nodded. Well said, well said. The golden crow third prince transformed into a handsome young man in human form. That beast is still alive, and is a huge threat to the primordial 9 races. Nobody can stay out of this. What a pity, Wuxia sneered. However, the dragons, barbarians, and Kuan races don't think that way and chose to stand by and do nothing this time round. The dragons are strong on the outside but weak on the inside. The barbarians are merely a bunch of simple-minded fools with strong limbs. As for the Kuan race Fufu, they must have been scared by this beast in the primordial battle. A heavenly eye race being said coldly. Among the living beings and alien races stood a human in loose Taoist robes, a Confucian crown, and a folding fan. That person had a faint smile on his face the entire time, and was unfathomable. Even when he stood with the experts of the primordial 9 races, his aura did not weaken. It was Heavenly Secrets of Enigma Palace. After exchanging pleasantries with the Golden Crow third prince and the others, Wuxia turned around and nodded at Heavenly Secrets. Of course, it's all thanks to Heavenly Secrets' divine foresight that we're able to trap this beast here. The primordial 9 races were born with a sense of superiority towards the human race. After all, the human race was born weak, and was once at the bottom of the hierarchy, a race that was enslaved by them throughout history. Furthermore, there was an ancient battle between both sides. All these years, although the primordial 6 races had been relying on Heavenly Secrets' divination to hunt down the night spirit, most of them did not look at Heavenly Secrets directly. Now that they heard Wuxia thank Heavenly Secrets, the other races did not have any reaction, and had cold expressions. It's nothing, Heavenly Secrets said indifferently. That beast is sharp and vigilant. I'm taking a final gamble that the direction he's most likely to escape in is that direction. Heavenly Secrets pointed to the west. That was the far west. From afar, one could see rows of undulating mountain ranges that towered into the clouds. If one focused their attention, they would be able to vaguely see that the mountain range was filled with endless corpses. Some of the corpses had yet to rot, and maintained their original shapes. Their bodies were long and more than 10,000 feet long. Sprawled on the mountain range, they resembled crouching dragons. To be precise, that was a dragon skeleton. A dragon skeleton that was more than 10,000 feet long. Dragons at the Dharma characteristic realm were only dozens of feet long. What was the concept of a dragon skeleton that was more than 10,000 feet long? Chapter 1289. Some of the corpses were in the shape of birds with wings that were more than 1,000 feet long. There were 3 leg bones beneath them that were golden in color. The Golden Crow third prince's face turned pale when he saw the corpse. All sorts of corpses were piled up in the endless mountain range. Not only were there corpses of the primordial 9 races, there were also countless unknown living beings. A torrential malevolent aura emanated from that direction, and a single glance was enough to cause one's heart to skip a beat. The experts of the primordial 6 races were all prideful. However, their auras weakened when they looked in that direction, and they averted their gazes with wary expressions. If there were 9 forbidden grounds in Tianhuang mainland that humans did not dare to set foot in, then the endless mountain range in the distance was the forbidden ground of the primordial 9 races. Far west Kunlun ruins. A Protoss named Han Ling said with lingering fear. Thankfully, we stopped that beast in advance. If he escaped over there, I'm afraid we wouldn't be able to catch him. Wuxia's expression was terrible as well as he urged. Let's go. Let's leave this place as soon as possible. Although they were still a long distance away from Kunlun ruins, the people of the primordial 6 races were already feeling uncomfortable. How should we deal with this beast? Kill him directly? Rakshasa Feng Tian bared his bloodthirsty fangs, and said with a murderous aura. A heavenly eye race being nodded. I think that works. Let's kill him to prevent any future troubles lest anything happens. No. The blood vine on the ground transformed into human form, and shook its head resolutely. The blood of this beast contains immense power. If we kill him and turn him into dead blood, his power will weaken too much. That's right. God Hanling nodded. This beast is filled with treasures. It's a little rash to kill him just like that. I'll trap him with the heavenly god lock of a Protoss. There's no way he can break free. At that time, we'll bring him back alive and discuss how to deal with him. Sure. Wuxia's eyes flickered as he nodded in agreement. Everything on Night Spirit, be it scales, claws, or blood, was an utmost treasure of the world. The primordial 6 races had their own motives, and were naturally unwilling to let one of them monopolize it. God Hanling slapped his storage pouch and pulled out a shimmering golden chain. There were 5 iron hoops attached to the chains. The inner circle of the iron hoops was embedded with sharp thorns and barbs. They were crisscross with each other, and were incomparably sharp. Seeing the heavenly god lock, the eyes of Wuxia and the others widened slightly. The heavenly god lock was the most famous weapon of the Protoss. Even the primordial 9 races would find it difficult to break free from the heavenly god lock. The spikes on the heavenly god lock could easily pierce through flesh and blood, digging deep into the flesh. Moreover, the spikes were hollow and could continuously drain blood, making it impossible for living beings trapped by the heavenly deity lock to recover their blood and qi. Once his qi and blood recovered slightly, he would be devoured by the spikes in the iron hoop. God Hanling threw the heavenly god lock towards Night Spirit. Crash! The heavenly deity lock descended and instantly bound the Night Spirit. The powerful divine power continued to strengthen and compress the Night Spirit's body. The Night Spirit's original body dissipated and turned into a human form. Crack! Crack! Instantly, the 5 iron hoops bound Night Spirit's arms, legs, and neck. The spikes pierced deeply into the Night Spirit's flesh. The Night Spirit grunted and frowned with a pained expression. Ha 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 ha! Rakshasa Feng Tian laughed excitedly. Little beast, let's see how arrogant you can be and how you can escape again. Right then, Heavenly Secrets' expression changed when he saw Night Spirit in human form. He murmured softly, "It's him." "Why? You've seen him before?" Noticing the strange expression on Heavenly Secrets' face, Wuxia turned and asked. Heavenly Secrets nodded. His name is Night Spirit, and he has appeared many times in the cultivation world. Although his combat strength is terrifying, he has never revealed his true form before. He has a close friend, and the cultivation world even thought that he was that person's spirit beast. That's impossible. A heavenly eye race being shook his head resolutely. Who can subdue the taboo race? Heavenly Secrets looked at the Protoss and Rakshasa races and smiled mysteriously. Back in the intermediate ancient battlefield, he even joined forces with that person and buried both of your races in Myriad Phenomenon City. Rakshasa Feng Tian's expression changed as he said coldly, "It's that person. What's his name?" Tao Lord Araki Takashi. Heavenly Secrets said slowly. Right now, he established the Wu Dao and allowed mortals without spirit roots to cultivate as well. His combat strength is terrifying, and he once killed many titular disciples of super sections. He condensed 3 heaven and earth dharma characteristics, and is extremely famous. 3 heaven and earth dharma characteristics? Everyone from the primordial 6 races frowned. The fact that Su Zimo condensed 3 heaven and earth dharma characteristics caused a huge uproar in the cultivation world. However, the primordial 6 races were merely surprised when they heard about it. For example, Wuxia, God Hanling, Rakshasa Feng Tian, and the others were all conjoint body mighty figures. Even if Su Zimo condensed 10 heaven and earth dharma characteristics, they would not take him seriously, let alone 3. How strong were the conjoint body mighty figures of the primordial 6 races? Even half-martial ancestors of the human race did not dare to provoke them. Where is he now? Rakshasa Feng Tian asked with a murderous aura. I'll make a move right now and kill that lad. Heavenly Secrets shook his head. Araki Takashi has a Mahayana patriarch backing him. I'm afraid you won't be able to injure him if you head over now. Furthermore, that person's movement technique is extremely fast. If he escapes with all his might, it'll be difficult to kill him. Humph. No matter how fast he is, he can't be faster than the Rakshasa race. Rakshasa Feng Tian harumphed coldly. Although he said that, he did not continue to insist. He was fearless against half-martial ancestors. However, he was still wary against Mahayana patriarchs. At the Mahayana realm, one would have comprehended divine powers, and that power was not something that a conjoint body could contend against. Heavenly secrets continued. Furthermore, if we alert the enemy and allow Araki Takashi to escape and hide, I won't be able to deduce his location. Even you can't divine it? Wuxia frowned. Even for the taboo race, heavenly secrets could deduce a rough range. To think that heavenly secrets could not divine a mere human. Heavenly secrets had a calm expression. There was once an expert who defied the heavens and changed Araki Takashi's fate. He's shrouded in a layer of fog, and I can't divine it. What should we do then? Rakshasa Feng Tian said coldly. I'll definitely kill that Araki Takashi. That's right. That lad once killed my clansman. I won't let him off either. God Hanling said slowly as well. The Golden Crow Third Prince smiled sinisterly. Even I'm curious about what you guys are saying. I want to meet this Tao Lord Araki Takashi. Fellow Taoist Heavenly Secrets, do you have any good ideas? Wuxia asked. It can't be considered a good plan. It's just an open scheme. Heavenly Secrets pointed to Night Spirit not far away and smiled. The once-in-a-millennium fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking is about to begin. At that time, Araki Takashi will definitely appear, even if he knows that it's dangerous with this beast as bait. Given Araki Takashi's personality, he'll definitely save this beast. At that time, there's no need for you guys to do anything. Naturally, countless sects and factions will kill him. All you have to do is watch from the sidelines and enjoy the show. The Golden Crow Third Prince clapped and laughed. Interesting, interesting. Chapter 1290. Nothing will go wrong, right? A heavenly eye race being frowned with a cold expression. Absolutely impossible. God Hanling waved it off and said proudly. This heavenly god lock was given to me by my Protoss elder. Even if it's smashed down by a Dharma treasure, it will be undamaged. Weapons used by Mahayana patriarchs could only be called Dharma treasures if they were infused with the power of divine powers. Heavenly Secrets nodded as well. Everyone, don't worry. The primordial 9 races aren't the only ones who will let the taboo live. The human race won't let it live either. The taboo is the enemy of all races. At that time, anyone who dares to protect it will have to die with it. Although Heavenly Secrets said those words with a smile, they contained a trace of cold killing intent. Misty Peak. Ever since Monk Yuan Bei passed away, Su Zimo had returned to this place. However, he had been feeling uneasy recently, as though something big was about to happen. It was a whim and definitely not a coincidence. However, he did not have a clue. This day, Su Zimo was meditating in his cave abode when his heart skipped a beat. Waving his sleeves, the door of his cave abode opened slowly, and a messenger spirit crane flew in. Su Zimo reached out to receive it. Xiaoning. The spirit crane carried a familiar aura. It was none other than Su Xiaoning. Brother, I miss you. How have you been? The fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking is about to begin. You'll be participating, right? We'll be able to meet then. At that point, Su Zimo smiled gently and continued reading. Have you seen Night Spirit all these years? More than 90 years ago, Night Spirit suddenly left my place. No one knows where he went, and he has never returned. When he left that day, he had a strange expression as though something was amiss. If he's with you, reply and let me know. At that point, Su Zimo fell into deep thought. Night Spirit was gone. Under normal circumstances, given Night Spirit's combat strength, it was nothing much for him to disappear for 100 years. There was probably no one in Tianhuang mainland who could hurt him. Even if he could not defeat them, he could escape. What could have happened to Night Spirit? Could it be that Night Spirit's background has been exposed? Then, Su Zimo shook his head. The Night Spirit was so cautious that he had only revealed his true form once in front of him. How could he expose himself so easily? Right then, another spirit crane flew in from outside the cave abode. Su Zimo took it and glanced at it. That spirit crane was from Lin Xuanji. Don't go to the Dharma characteristic ranking, don't go. There was not much information on the spirit crane. There were only a few words, but it was a clear warning. Moreover, it seemed to be written in a hurry. Could it be that the various super sects have guessed that Master has passed away and are preparing to join forces to kill me during the Dharma characteristic ranking? Su Zimo quickly thought of this possibility. All these years, the reason why Glass Palace, Zephyr Thunder Palace, Sword Sect and other super sects tolerated him was because they were wary of Monk Yuan Bei. Now that Monk Yuan Bei had passed away, it was normal for those super sects to be restless. Su Zimo sneered inwardly. Since that was the case, he would not go to the Dharma characteristic ranking. For Lin Xuanji to give such a reminder, the dangers of the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round must be unimaginable. Just as he was pondering, a figure descended outside the door. It was Nian Qi. Young Master, there's news of the Dharma characteristic ranking. Nian Qi came to Su Zimo's side and said, I heard that the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round is still in the Middle Continent. However, I heard that it's different from the past. Apart from some specific rewards, the 72 cultivators on the Dharma characteristic ranking also have a chance to drink the blood of a taboo. What taboo blood? Su Zimo did not think too much about it and asked casually. Nian Qi shook his head. I'm not sure either. It seems like Enigma Palace joined forces with some super sects and captured an extremely terrifying taboo, living being from the primordial era. It's said that every single drop of blood from this taboo contains an unimaginable power. Su Zimo's expression changed starkly. At the same time in the Dragon Bone Valley, the true bodies of the dragons that were in seclusion were awakened by a series of rapid knocks. Su Zimo was already the young master of the dragons and reigned over the 5 lineages. Unless there was something extremely important, the dragons would definitely not disturb him. Su Zimo did not hesitate and stood up to leave the dragon lair. Young Master, the elders have invited you to the main hall for a discussion. An illumination dragon bowed respectfully. Su Zimo nodded and headed for the main hall in the central region. After all these years of seclusion cultivation, the true bodies of the dragons had cultivated extremely quickly with the help of their 3 innate divine powers, and were already at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. Of course, if they wanted to break through to the conjoint body realm from the perfected Dharma characteristic realm, they would not only require an opportunity, but also a long period of accumulation. Su Zimo arrived at the discussion hall and looked up. There were more than 10 elders seated in the hall. Not only were the grand elders of the Illumination Dragon lineage present, the grand elders of the other 4 lineages were present as well. What's with the commotion? Su Zimo lamented internally. What's the matter for so many elders to be alarmed? Long Mo, have a seat. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder waved his hand, indicating for Su Zimo to sit down and talk. As the young master of the dragons, his status was on par with the elders present, and was even above some ordinary dragon elders. The reason why I asked you to come today is to inform you of something, the Illumination Dragon's Grand Elder said. A taboo of the primordial era has a bloodline that is still alive. Furthermore, it has been captured alive by the combined forces of the primordial 6 races. When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The first thing that came to his mind was the night spirit. However, Su Zimo maintained his composure and took a deep breath. What taboo? Please explain, Grand Elder. The Illumination Dragon's Grand Elder reminisced and said slowly, in the primordial era, there were thousands of races and the hierarchy was strict. It was far crueler than it is now. The primordial 9 races have already dominated Tianhuang mainland in the primordial era. However, there's another type of living being above us, the taboo race. True enough. The bloodline of the night spirit was indeed stronger and more terrifying than the primordial 9 races. It was no wonder that the night spirit dared to eat the dragon egg without hesitation when they first entered the Dragon Bone Valley. The Illumination Dragon's Grand Elder continued. The taboo race is extremely special. The chances of them being born are extremely low, and their bloodlines are rare. Only 1 or 2 of them exist in every generation. At the moment, the Dragon Phoenix is one of the taboo races. Not only does the Dragon Phoenix possess the bloodline of dragons, it also possesses the bloodline of the Divine Phoenix. It's extremely strong, and possesses torrential combat strength. It's a true taboo of the primordial era. At that point, the Illumination Dragon's Grand Elder looked deeply at Su Zimo. After pausing for a moment, the Illumination Dragon's Grand Elder continued. There's also the Kuan Pung race. Among the primordial 9 races, one of them is the Kuan race. The Kuan Pung is much stronger than the Kuan, and can transform into a fish that can devour oceans for thousands of kilometers. They can also transform into a bird that possesses the power of Supreme Yin and Supreme Yang, and soar through the world. This was the first time Su Zimo had heard of this. Su Zimo did not interrupt and continued listening. Although the night spirit was a taboo race, it was definitely not the dragon phoenix or Kuan Pung. The Illumination Dragon's Grand Elder said slowly. There's also a lineage of the taboo race known as the Ho. Chapter 1291. The Grand Elder of the Candle Dragons said, the Ho, the god of massacre of the primordial era, stood at the top of all living beings, and the primordial 9 races were its food. It was no wonder why it was called a taboo, to feed on the primordial 9 races. Su Zimo lamented internally. There's no mistake, night spirit should be the Ho. It was no wonder why Monkey and the others did not like to eat the night spirit when it was first hatched, no matter what spirit beasts they caught. Instead, it expressed an unprecedented interest when it came to the Dragon Bone Valley and caught sight of a dragon egg. The Grand Elder of the Candle Dragons continued. Of course, due to the scarcity of the 3 taboo races, they do not have any races at all. Naturally, they do not have the ability and energy to rule over Tianhuang mainland. Su Zimo nodded. In the primordial era, the primordial 9 races ruled over Tianhuang mainland. However, there were 3 taboo living beings above the primordial 9 races that possessed the ability to kill them. What was the battle of the primordial era about? Su Zimo asked. The Grand Elder of the Candle Dragons had a conflicted expression. The primordial era was the most prosperous era of Tianhuang mainland, and the 3 taboo races existed. However, the dragon phoenix was related to the dragons by blood and was naturally closer to the dragons. The Kuan Pung was closer to the Kuan race as well. Only the Ho remained a loner with a proud personality and did not get close to any race. The Ho was cruel and fearless, killing the primordial 9 races casually. Finally, the dragon phoenix and Kuan Pung were enraged and led the primordial 9 races to fight the Ho. That battle was extremely tragic and corpses were strewn everywhere, piling up into mountains. Countless living beings of the primordial 9 races died, and almost all the races were implicated. Not many were spared. Su Zimo was silent. There was indeed a reason why it was called a taboo. Who wouldn't be afraid of an existence as such that possessed the ability to destroy the 10,000 races? Even with the dragon phoenix and Kuan Pung, the primordial 9 races were still severely injured. It was obvious how tragic that battle was. There was no right or wrong in that battle. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder lamented as well. Later on, because of that battle, the 2 taboos, the dragon phoenix and Kuan Pung, were severely injured and failed to transcend the tribulation to become immortals. Eventually, they died from exhaustion of their lifespans. Before the dragon phoenix died, she was filled with regret. The great elder of the Black Dragon people nodded and said, "It is precisely because of this that we hesitated for a long time when we heard about the birth of the Hui bloodline. That's why we didn't join the hunt. However, even if we did not participate in the encirclement, the Hui did not manage to escape and was captured by the primordial 6 races." Su Zimo thought for a while and said casually, "If we can save this Hui, at least he won't become enemies with the dragons when he grows up." "Impossible," the great elder of the Black Dragon people said resolutely. The other dragons also shook their heads. The Grand Elder of the Candle Dragons said, "The primordial 9 races and the 10,000 races have an innate fear towards taboo living beings. If the taboo living beings' identity and bloodline are exposed before they grow up, there's only a single outcome for them: death. The primordial 9 races, the 10,000 races of Tianhuang mainland, and the human cultivators will definitely not allow another taboo to grow. The fact that the dragons did not make a move has already incurred the resentment of the other races. If we dare to save this taboo now, we'll definitely incur the wrath of the other races and be surrounded by them. There's a calamity of extinction. At this moment, anyone who dares to lay their hands on this taboo will have to die. Su Zimo was silent. Actually, he was testing the dragon's reaction by saying that just now. Initially, he wanted to make use of the power of the dragons to rescue Night Spirit. But now that he saw the reactions of the dragon's elders, that was impossible. Not only that, if he revealed any intention of saving Night Spirit, all the dragon's elders would dissuade him, and even detain him in the Dragon Bone Valley. At that thought, Su Zimo remained silent without batting an eyelid. No matter what others thought or what sort of taboo Night Spirit was, he had to head to the Middle Continent and do everything he could to rescue Night Spirit. At the same time, the dragon's true bodies sensed the news from Qinglian's true body as well. The two true bodies were telepathic and made a decision almost instantly. Wu Dao's true body had just entered the martial spirit realm and was equivalent to the nascent soul realm. There was no need to alarm him because he was not strong enough. This time round, the dragon's true bodies and Qinglian's true bodies had to be mobilized. Su Zimo would face unprecedented danger on this trip to the Middle Continent, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that he would have a slim chance of survival. Some super sects already had a feud with him to begin with. If he dared to risk universal condemnation to save Night Spirit, it would be equivalent to forcing himself into a dead end and making the entire world his enemy. Even so, Su Zimo did not hesitate at all. To him, Night Spirit was not some primordial taboo. Instead, it was his sworn brother and family that he had followed for many years. He would definitely not stand by idly and stay out of this. Even if he had to make the entire world his enemy, he would not hesitate. The Grand Elder of the Candle Dragons said, "The reason why we called you here today is not because of this taboo. We want to remind you of something." "What is it?" Su Zimo asked. The Grand Elders of the 5 lineages exchanged glances. The Grand Elder of the Candle Dragons looked at Su Zimo and said slowly, "We speculate that there's a high chance that you'll grow into another taboo. The Dragon Phoenix." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. However, he soon revealed a look of realization. He had dragon blood and the divine phoenix bone in his body. If the two bloodlines were to fuse, there was a chance that he could become a new taboo, the Dragon Phoenix. Back when you received the ancestral dragon's baptism and awakened your innate divine powers, many phenomenons appeared. The only bloodline that can make an ancestral dragon fear and defeat a 5-clawed divine dragon is probably the Dragon Phoenix. The Grand Elder of the Candle Dragons sighed immediately. Of course, that might require an opportunity. I don't know either. After all, you can't even conjure a complete dragon body right now. The Grand Elder of the Black Dragon people said, "If you can become a Dragon Phoenix in the future, you have to be careful not to expose your identity and bloodline before you reach the ancestor realm. Otherwise, you'll end up with the same outcome as this hoe. At that time, even the dragons won't be able to protect you." Su Zimo nodded. A Dragon Phoenix was too far away from him. He might not be able to wait until then. For the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round, the true bodies of the dragons and Qinglian were not facing Dharma characteristic paragons, but all the sects, factions, and primordial 6 races. There was a high chance that the 2 true bodies would die on the spot. This time round, it was clear that the other party had set up a trap. Not only did they want to kill the Night Spirit, they wanted to kill him as well. Who knew what sort of trap they had set up? Among them, the only variable that was beneficial to Su Zimo was the true bodies of the dragons. Suddenly, Su Zimo said, "I intend to take a look at the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round." What are you going to do?" The Grand Elder of the Candle Dragons frowned and became wary immediately. Su Zimo said, "I haven't seen what the hoe of the 3 great taboos looks like yet. This is a rare opportunity. How can I miss it?" "Elders, don't worry. I'll hide my identity and watch the show from the side. There won't be any danger." Chapter 1292. Middle State Heaven and Earth Valley. The fact that it was named Heaven and Earth meant that this valley was special. The Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic ranking that occurred once every 1,000 years would be held in this valley. This valley was extremely vast, with a radius of several thousand miles. At that time, the Dharma characteristic prodigies from all over Tianhuang mainland would gather here to fight for the 72 places on the Dharma characteristic ranking. Being able to be ranked on the Dharma characteristic ranking was not only an honor, but also a rich reward. Similar to the phenomenon ranking, the Dharma characteristic ranking was presided over by the Enigma Palace. As the competition for the Dharma characteristic ranking approached, the number of cultivators around the Heaven and Earth Valley gradually increased. I heard that Fairy Luo Shui of the Snowdrift Valley obtained an ancient inheritance and condensed the Ice Soul Dharma body. This time, she has a chance of getting into the top 10 of the Dharma characteristic ranking. Pang Yu of Overlord Palace has condensed the long-lost Ten Yama physique. He's not weak either. I heard that the Demoness of Pure Maiden Sect obtained an ancient inheritance in the Tao inheritance ground and condensed the Mystic Maiden Dharmic body. Right now, she's not even at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm, but her combat strength is shocking. If you ask me, the battle for the top of the Dharma laws ranking this time is the most predictable. I heard that Tao Lord Araki Takashi has condensed 3 Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics, and all of them are 87 feet tall. He's definitely the top of the Dharma characteristic ranking. Indeed, I imagine no one is a match for Tao Lord Araki Takashi. Before the battle for the Dharma characteristic ranking began, many cultivators were already discussing it. By the way, do you know what the ancient taboo is? I'm not sure. It seems to be an extremely terrifying living being from the primordial era that is comparable to the primordial 9 races. So powerful. I heard that it took a lot of effort to capture this taboo beast alive. Look, the Sword Sect cultivators are here. A cultivator pointed into the distance and exclaimed. The Sword Sect came so early this time. As the time approached, all the major sects, forces, and super sects showed up one after another and descended upon Heaven and Earth Valley. This time round, more than 10 cultivators from Misty Peak arrived at the Middle Continent, under the lead of the old immortal Crane as well. In Misty Peak, Nian Qi had the highest chance of winning a place on the Dharma characteristic ranking. Young Master left long ago. Why hasn't he shown himself yet? When Nian Qi arrived at Heaven and Earth Valley, he began to look around, but he couldn't find Su Zimo. He must have been delayed by something. Don't worry. The old immortal Crane smiled. Not long after, the cultivators from the 4 major unorthodox groups arrived. For the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round, some super sects were led by conjoint body mighty figures to lead their disciples. It was the same for the 4 unorthodox groups. At the front were 4 body integration mighty figures. The most eye-catching person was a middle-aged man in scarlet robes from 100 Refinement Sect. He had an imposing appearance and his eyes were bright, as though they were burning with flames. Although the mighty figure was only at early stage conjoint body, his aura surpassed most of the conjoint body mighty figures present. This person was the reborn Extreme Fire. Chiguramon Shengguanzi was standing beside Extreme Fire. She looked extremely close to Extreme Fire. Behind her was Chiguramon's titular disciple, Fairy Thousand Crane. It was Lung Ro who walked out of Misty Peak. Xiaoning and Ji Qingtian of Elixir Yang sect arrived with the sect as well. Little Fatty of Tomb sect was mixed in the crowd as well. All of them ran to Misty Peak to catch up with the old immortal Crane. Nian Qi, my brother isn't here? Xiaoning asked softly. Nian Qi replied, I'm not sure. Young Master left a long time ago, but he shouldn't be here yet. Xiaoning nodded with a worried expression and asked, Do you know what the primordial taboo is this time round? Has anyone seen it before? I'm not sure. Enigma Palace hid it extremely well, and no one has seen what the primordial taboo looks like. Nian Qi shook his head. Xiaoning sighed internally, and the scene of Night Spirit leaving flashed through her mind. As time passed by, the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects and 6 Buddhist monasteries were all present. The successors of the 5 heretical doctrines had arrived as well. The people of the 3 aristocratic families and 2 islands were still nowhere to be seen. What's wrong? What are you thinking about? Shang Guanzi could not help but ask gently when she saw Extreme Fire frowning in deep thought, as though something was bothering him. Something's not right. Extreme Fire frowned and looked at Sword Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace, and the other super sections. These sects have sent a huge lineup for the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round. Normally speaking, the Dharma Daojun was the main character of the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking. At most, the major sects and factions would send 1 or 2 conjoint body mighty figures to lead the team. However, there were more than 30 conjoint body mighty figures in Sword Sect this time round. It was the same for Zephyr Thunder Palace, Glass Palace, Heavenly Dipper Sect and Chaos Essence Sect. There's indeed something strange. Shang Guanzi nodded with a puzzled expression. Extreme Fire swept his gaze across Sword Sect's camp with a torch-like gaze as he said slowly. Furthermore, did you notice that there are some conjoint body mighty figures among these sects that don't seem to be from these sects? What do you mean? Shang Guanzi was confused. Extreme Fire said bluntly. Some of them don't seem to be humans. They're not humans. Shang Guanzi was shocked and instinctively thought that fiend demons had infiltrated. However, on second thought, how capable did fiend demons have to be able to hide from the eyes of the conjoint body mighty figures present? If they were not fiend demons, could they be? Are you talking about the primordial 9 races? Shang Guanzi asked softly. It's possible. Extreme Fire nodded with a grim expression. It's been so many years since the members of the primordial 9 races stepped foot into Tianhuang mainland. What are they trying to do now that they've appeared in the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking? Shang Guanzi asked. I'm not sure yet. Let's wait and see, Extreme Fire said. The Dharma characteristic ranking had yet to begin, and although it seemed calm on the surface, Extreme Fire could sense that there were undercurrents surging beneath the calm surface with killing intent everywhere. As though something raging was brewing. Suddenly Extreme Fire asked, the Dharma characteristic ranking is about to begin. Zemo isn't here yet? I don't see him. Shang Guanzi shook her head as well. On the other side, Heavenly Secrets, Immortal Sword and the others gathered and communicated with their spirit consciousnesses. Tao Lord Araki Takashi hasn't appeared yet. What should we do? Immortal Sword said. He might have sensed danger and won't come. Absolutely impossible. Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently with confidence. Pausing for a moment he continued. The reason why Araki Takashi hasn't appeared is because he hasn't seen that beast yet. Fufu, Araki Takashi is way too cautious. If he doesn't come out, I'll force him to. After saying that, Heavenly Secrets flashed and arrived in midair. Everyone, please be silent. Heavenly Secrets pressed down with both hands, and his voice was neither loud nor soft. However, it spread to every corner of Heaven and Earth Valley, and attracted countless gazes. The fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking is about to begin. Everyone, please calm down before that. Heavenly Secrets said indifferently. In the primordial era, there was once a taboo living being that was savage and bloodthirsty. It incurred the wrath of the heavens and the 10,000 races. In this generation, when we heard that the taboo bloodline had awakened, we've already joined forces to capture it alive. Today, we'll kill this fiend and drink his blood in front of all the cultivators in the world. Chapter 1293. The cultivators in Heaven and Earth Valley were densely packed, and all of them were looking around. Some of them were confused while others were curious, wanting to see what this legendary taboo, living being looked like. Heavenly Secrets surveyed his surroundings, as though he was searching for something. Unfortunately, Su Zemo did not appear even after a long time. There are too many cultivators in Heaven and Earth Valley. If Araki Takashi is hiding among them, it'll be difficult to find him. Immortal Sword frowned slightly, and sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness. Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently. Araki Takashi is very cautious. I don't think he'll show himself, since he hasn't seen that beast. That's fine too. Bring that beast out, and let the cultivators of the world take a look. Heavenly Secrets looked at God Hanling behind him, and nodded slightly. God Hanling smiled gently, and removed a bag from his waist. Opening it, a black shadow fell out. Clang! Clang! Accompanied by the sound of heavy chains, the black shadow fell heavily to the ground. A commotion broke out in the crowd. Countless gazes were focused on that figure. It was a black-robed young man, who seemed to have lost a lot of blood chi. His face was pale, and there was even a gigantic iron hoop around his neck that was stained with blood. Even so, there was no hint of pain in the black-robed young man's eyes. Instead, they were cold. What's that? That's what a primordial taboo looks like. He doesn't look any different from us. Many cultivators were disappointed. Night Spirit. Suddenly, a series of exclamations sounded from the direction of Elixir Yang sect. A female cultivator was excited and wanted to rush forward. However, she was held down by a conjoint body mighty figure of Elixir Yang sect and could not move. Isn't that Fairy Elixir Yang? What's going on? Fairy Elixir Yang knows that black-robed man. Night Spirit. I was wondering why that person looked familiar. He seems to have a close relationship with Tao Lord Araki Takeshi. Some cultivators discussed softly. Fairy Elixir Yang was Su Xiaoning. Xiaoning, don't be rash. Calm down. The elder of the Elixir Yang sect looked solemn. She had lived for so long and was very knowledgeable. Naturally, she could tell that the super sects had sent such a large force this time. It was obvious that they did not come with good intentions. At this time, if he stood out rashly, it was extremely likely that he would invite a fatal disaster. How can I stay calm? That's Night Spirit. Seeing Night Spirit's reaction, Ning's tears drop at once. Night Spirit raised his head slightly and frowned slightly, as if he was in pain. Just this slight movement caused some blood to seep out of his throat. Night Spirit looks into Ning's eyes. He uses all his strength to shake his head. This tore at the wound, and the spikes pierced deeper into his neck. Several streaks of scarlet blood slowly flowed out. Night Spirit wants to remind Ning not to stand out. He knew his situation very well. There was no way he could survive after falling into the hands of the primordial 6 races. At this time, whoever dared to stand by his side would die with him. Night Spirit, don't move. Ning cries. At that moment, she was completely at a loss. She wanted to rush forward, but was restrained by the sect elders, and could not move at all. She could only stand on the spot and look at Night Spirit with a knife in her heart. All these years, no matter where she was, no matter what thoughts she had, even when she roamed the north region of Tianhuang mainland to practice medicine, Night Spirit had never left her side, and had always guarded her silently without abandoning her. All these years, if not for Night Spirit, she would have died countless times. Furthermore, after spending so many years together, the relationship between the two of them had already transcended the ordinary meaning of friendship. It was just that neither of them had pointed it out. In Ning's heart, Night Spirit was already a family member second only to Su Zimo. Although she had experienced a lot over the years, and her personality had become stronger, she still felt helpless against such a situation, and her mind was in a mess. I've got it. Extreme Fire's gaze narrowed, and he suddenly said, I'm afraid they're not only going to deal with this taboo for the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round. Zimo is also involved. Pure Maiden Sect. Demoness Ji frowned slightly with her veil. Could it be for Zimo? She knew deeply about the relationship between Su Zimo and Night Spirit. She also realized that the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round was a gigantic trap. Right then, Heavenly Secrets said slowly, I believe all the cultivators here are puzzled. How can such an ordinary-looking person be a primordial taboo? That was indeed the question in the minds of many cultivators. That's because you haven't seen the true form of that beast yet. After saying that, Heavenly Secrets tapped gently with his fingertip and released a mist that entered Night Spirit's body. Roar! A roar burst forth from the depths of Night Spirit's throat, and its entire body began to tremble, expanding continuously. In the blink of an eye, a gigantic demon beast that was 100 feet tall and almost 200 feet long appeared on the spot. Clang! Clang! Night Spirit struggled and roared with a torrential malevolent aura, as the heavenly god Locke let out a violent sound. Pust! Many cultivators sucked in a cold breath. The entire crowd subconsciously took half a step back. The aura emitted by Night Spirit was way too terrifying. Even human cultivators would feel fear subconsciously when they saw living beings of the primordial 9 races, let alone Night Spirit, that even the primordial 9 races were wary of. It was an uncontrollable fear that came from the depths of their bloodlines. All the cultivators present felt their scalps prickle, and their hairs stand on end. Even the pupils of conjoint body mighty figures present constricted. Even though Night Spirit was bound by an unknown golden chain, Night Spirit's claws and fangs danced with a cold glint, causing their hearts to palpitate. This was a living being that was purely born to kill. Beast, reaching out, Heavenly Secrets conjured a long whip and whipped Night Spirit heavily, hollering, "Behave yourself!" Night Spirit's body shuddered once more, almost spasming. He could not escape at all when he was bound by the Heavenly God Lock. God Han Ling stood out from behind Heavenly Secrets and tapped his finger gently, shooting out a golden beam of light that entered the Heavenly God Lock. Whoosh! The Heavenly God Lock shone with a golden light, and the iron hoop shrank continuously. Poof! Poof! Once again, blood spewed out from Night Spirit's limbs and neck. Under the suppression of the Heavenly God Lock, Night Spirit reverted to his human form and laid on the ground with a weak aura and a dispirited expression. In the primordial era, this beast destroyed countless living beings of the various races and is bloodthirsty. If he's allowed to grow, there will never be peace in Tianhuang mainland. Heavenly Secrets said slowly, "Since that's the case, it's better to kill this beast lest it wreaks havoc and massacres the world." "That's right, kill it. I heard that the flesh of this beast is extremely nutritious. Let's kill it and divide it up." A series of shouts sounded from the crowd. The conjoint body mighty figures of the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects and 6 Buddhist monasteries, nodded one after another without any objections. There was no way such a massive threat could be allowed to grow. No wonder Night Spirit was captured. So, there's a cultivator from Enigma Palace backing him. Right then, a cold voice sounded from outside the crowd. The cultivators turned towards the voice. A cultivator walked over in midair. He had black hair and green robes. His features were refined, but there was a murderous look on his face as he walked over slowly with a murderous expression. "You're finally here." Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently. "I've been waiting for a long time." Chapter 1294. Tao Lord Araki Takashi. Immortal Sword's gaze was venomous as he grit his teeth in hatred. His essence spirit was injured and had yet to recover. All these years, it could be said that it was all thanks to Tao Lord Araki Takashi that he ended up in this state. Back in Thousand Demon Valley, Araki Takashi was the one who snatched away the heaven-slaying sword art that should have belonged to him. If he had obtained the heaven-slaying sword art, his combat strength would have increased exponentially, and he would not have lost to extreme fire later on. Neither would he have been chased down by Shura, and his reputation would not have fallen. He would not have lost to Araki Takashi and ended up in his current state. With his essence spirit injured, his combat strength was greatly reduced, and he was not even half of his peak. When he saw Su Zimo appear, Immortal Sword clenched his fists instinctively. He knew that all the humiliation he had suffered over the years would be settled today with Su Zimo. He was not the only one with such thoughts. "Araki Takashi, how dare you come and fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking?" A Dharma Daojun of Glass Palace stood up slowly and exuded a powerful aura. His body seemed to shine with a glass light as he said slowly, "It's time to settle the grudge between you and Glass Palace." "Who are you?" Su Zimo asked casually without even looking at him. "Tao Lord Feng Chen." The Dharma Daojun of Glass Palace said slowly, "Tao Lord Feng Chen. I heard that his rainbow glass body has already been cultivated to a height of 88 feet. He has a chance of fighting for the top 10 of the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round." 88 feet. Doesn't that mean that it's a foot taller than Araki Takashi's Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic? Otherwise, where do you think Tao Lord Feng Chen got his confidence from? It was no longer a secret that Monk Yuan Bei was dead. If Su Zimo had not appeared this time round, Glass Palace would have looked for Su Zimo after the Dharma characteristic ranking. Back then, Su Zimo killed many titular disciples in the Tao inheritance ground. That was a huge slap to the mouths of the super sects. This humiliation and deep hatred was only temporarily put aside because of the person beneath the Dragon Burial Valley. However, none of the super sects had forgotten about it. Araki Takashi, I heard that you snatched away the legacy of my Zephyr Thunder Palace. How audacious of you. Indeed, right after Tao Lord Feng Chun, a Dharma Daojun of Zephyr Thunder Palace stood out and hollered with a thunderous voice. Do you really think that there's no one in Zephyr Thunder Palace? And who are you? Su Zimo asked with an indifferent expression. I am Tao Lord Five Thunders. The Tao Lord of Zephyr Thunder Palace spoke proudly. Tao Lord Five Thunder has also come out of seclusion. He was ranked 5th on the previous Dharma characteristic ranking, and his heaven and earth Dharma form was 84 feet tall. I wonder how much he has grown over the years. If he dares to challenge Araki Takashi, he must have something to rely on. Heavenly Secrets smiled at the side without saying anything. He was in no hurry to attack. As long as Araki Takashi appeared, he would definitely die. Is that the strongest monster incarnate in history, Tao Lord Araki Takashi? The Golden Crow Third Prince pouted his lips with a disdainful expression. He doesn't look like anything special. I don't think he can withstand a single move of mine. It's time to take revenge for my clansmen in Myriad Phenomenon City. Rakshasa Feng Tian twisted his neck, producing a series of cracking sounds. Don't be hasty. God Hanling smiled gently. Let's watch the show first, and let the humans fight amongst themselves. Draped in a wide hood, Wuxia exclaimed softly with a pair of dark eyes in the darkness. He was way too familiar with that face. Back in the Dragon Bone Valley, the young Master of Dragons looked the same. Of course, the young Master of Dragons had an even more berserk aura and terrifying blood chi. Furthermore, he had a head of scarlet hair. However, the green-robe cultivator's aura seemed to be more reserved. There was no way the two of them were the same person. However, Wuxia would definitely not believe that the two of them were unrelated. Interesting. Let's see what secrets you have. Wuxia lamented internally, and waited to see what would happen. Zimo doesn't seem to be in a good situation. Shangguanzi frowned slightly. It's fine, Extreme Fire said. I'm afraid these Dharma characteristic paragons won't be able to threaten Zimo. Shangguanzi said. However, behind these Dharma characteristic paragons are the conjoint body mighty figures of various supersections. If these Dharma characteristic paragons are defeated, they won't be able to sit still either. Humph, Extreme Fire said. If any conjoint body mighty figure dares to attack Zimo, I'll head down and meet them. Although Patriarch Yuan Bei is dead, Zimo still has me, Extreme Fire. Let's see who dares to bully the weak and suppress Zimo. In midair, Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings and swept his gaze across the super sects such as Sword Sect, Heavenly Dipper Sect, and Chaos Essence Sect. He said slowly, Who else wants to settle scores with me? Araki Takashi stepped forward. Araki Takashi, you've killed so many titular disciples. Do you really think that no one can stop you? A Tao Lord of Chaos Essence Sect stood out and shouted, Aye. There's no need to say any more. Su Zimo waved his hand. Before the Tao Lord of Chaos Essence Sect could finish, he was interrupted by Su Zimo with a wave of his hand. I'm not interested in your titles, Su Zimo said in a deep voice. I'm not here today to fight with you guys for the top of the Dharma characteristic ranking. I advise everyone not to provoke me. He was sincerely reminding these cultivators. Arrogant. Arrogant. Before long, Dharma characteristic paragons of Heavenly Dipper Sect, Sword Sect, Illusion Fiend Cult, Malevolent Earth Sect, and Cloud Rain Sect of the Fiend Sects stood out and glared at Su Zimo with unfriendly and murderous expressions. Amitba. A monk from Diamond Monastery of the Buddhist monasteries stood out and pressed his palms together, chanting a Buddhist proclamation. Patron Araki Takashi, the death of Monk Black Gold of Diamond Monastery has something to do with you, right? Monk Black Gold's death in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple had nothing to do with Su Zimo. Diamond Monastery is here to join in the fun as well? Su Zimo swept his gaze. Ha 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 ha. The Golden Crow Third Prince could not help but laugh and wave his hand. Interesting, interesting. A single cultivator is actually surrounded by the immortal, Buddhist and fiend Daros. Su Zimo looked in the direction of the voice. Although the Golden Crow Third Prince was in human form, Su Zimo could already sense that this person was extremely terrifying, and his blood chi was scorching. He was definitely from another race. There was a high chance that he was one of the primordial 9 races. Given his current combat strength, he would be able to carve out a bloody path, even against the encirclement of conjoint body mighty figures of the human race. However, if a conjoint body mighty figure of the primordial 9 races was here, they would be a huge threat to him. He might not even be able to leave alive, let alone rescue Night Spirit. Araki Takashi, I don't care what you're here for. Since you're here, pay with your life for the fallen cultivators of Glass Palace. Dao Lord Fengchen hollered, and did not waste any more time with Su Zimo. Leaping up, he released his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic right away. Swoosh! A phantom soared into the skies from the top of Dao Lord Fengchen's head. In the blink of an eye, it had already risen to a height of 88 feet and stood tall. Its body shone with a rainbow glass light, like an exquisite jade bracelet, that shone with a bedazzling glow like a gemstone. Boom! The Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic attacked brazenly, and smashed towards Su Zimo. Get lost! Su Zimo's attention was not on the Dharma characteristic paragons at all, and was still searching for traces of the primordial 9 races in the crowd. Without even looking, he punched casually. It was a top-tier Dharmic art of the Buddhist monasteries, Great Sanskrit Light Fist. Dharmic powers were vast and surging like an ocean. Dao Lord Fengchen's rainbow glass body was 88 feet tall. Against the might of that punch, it seemed insignificant, and its aura was completely gone. Boom! There was a deafening sound. Right in front of countless gazes, the rainbow glass body was shattered by Su Zimo's punch. The crowd was shocked. Chapter 1295. The Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was the strongest technique of the Dharma Daojun. An 88 feet tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was even more shocking. If it was in the previous phenomenon rankings, it would definitely be at the top of the Dharma characteristic ranking. But now, the rainbow glass body was shattered by a single Dharmic art from Su Zimo. Notwithstanding the level of that Dharmic art, the Dharmic powers released by it were way too terrifying. Even the 88 feet tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic could not withstand it. Dao Lord Fengchen's face was drained of blood as he retreated, and almost fell from midair. All of his pride vanished in the face of Su Zimo's punch. No, Araki Takashi isn't at mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. The moment Su Zimo attacked, there was no way he could hide his cultivation realm. Perfected Dharma characteristic realm. This. Araki Takashi has only been in the Dharma characteristic realm for slightly more than 100 years, and he's already at perfected Dharma characteristic realm. As expected of the number 1 monster incarnate of history, his cultivation speed is way too shocking. A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. Su Zimo tempered his essence spirit from the immortal, Buddhist and fiend sects, and his Dharmic powers at perfected Dharma characteristic realm were already unimaginably vast. It far surpassed the Dharma characteristic realm, and was comparable to any conjoint body mighty figure present. All of you get lost. Su Zimo's gaze was like lightning as he glared at Dao Lord Five Thunder and the other Dharma Daojun, and said coldly. In reality, the Dharma Daojun were already stunned by Su Zimo's punch, and did not dare to act rashly. However, they were all reputable paragons and monster incarnates of the cultivation world after all. None of them could take it lying down if they were reprimanded in such a manner in front of everyone. Araki Takashi, you're way too arrogant. Dao Lord Five Thunder harumphed coldly. Right now, all the super sects and paragons are gathered. You're only at the Dharma characteristic realm. So what if you're strong? If I'm strong, I can suppress you. Su Zimo was concerned about Night Spirit, and was unwilling to get entangled with the Dharma Daojun. Without a second word, he conjured the immortal trap seal, and imprisoned Dao Lord Five Thunder. All right. Dao Lord Five Thunder was not afraid at all as he shouted, I'd like to see how long you, Araki Takashi, can remain arrogant today. Boom. Suddenly, a gigantic phantom burst forth from within Tao Lord Five Thunder's body. Instantly, it grew to 80 feet and showed no signs of stopping. In the blink of an eye, a cosmic form surrounded by wind and thunder descended in midair. It was 1 foot taller than the rainbow-glazed body just now, 89 feet. 1,000 years ago, his Zephyr Thunder Dharma body was only 84 feet tall. After 1,000 years, Tao Lord Five Thunder had already condensed his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic to a height of 89 feet. Araki Takashi, you killed 2 of my Hunyuan sex evildoers. Pay with your life. On the other side, a Tao Lord of Chaos Essence sect stood out and released Heaven and Earth Discovery immediately. Boom! A phantom soared into the skies. In the blink of an eye, it grew to a height of 84 feet. Chaos Essence 1 Chi. Araki Takashi, I heard that you have more than one Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic. I'd like to see it for myself today as well. A Tao Lord of Heavenly Dipper sect stood out and released his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic as well. 85 feet tall Heavenly Dipper body. Bang! 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 Illusion Fiend Dharma body. 16 feet golden body. Startling sword body. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 Dharma Daojun appeared and surrounded Suzimo. One after another, Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics stood in midair with majestic auras and terrifying auras. They're going to join forces to deal with Araki Takashi. These Dharma Daojun are definitely ranked at the top of the Dharma characteristic ranking in terms of combat strength. To think that the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking would turn out this way. Suddenly, Immortal Sword sneered when he saw that. Elder Immortal Sword, what's wrong? The disciple behind Immortal Sword, who was also a Dharma Daojun, asked softly. Immortal Sword shook his head slightly and smirked, saying with a mocking expression, these Dharma Daojun are no match for Araki Takashi at all. If there was anyone present who understood Suzimo's combat strength the most, Immortal Sword was definitely one of them. That was because he was nearly killed by Suzimo in the bamboo forest. Then why aren't you stopping those Tao Lords, Master? The disciple asked again. Immortal Sword smiled without saying anything. Right then, Heavenly Secrets looked over. The two of them exchanged glances with a tacit understanding. They naturally would not step out to stop him. The more vicious Araki Takashi was in the fight with the Dharma Daojun, the less room there would be for Araki Takashi to negotiate with the super sects. At that time, Araki Takashi would be the enemy of the entire world, being the strongest monster incarnate in history, and imparting martial arts to all living beings would all be a joke. On the battlefield, the moment the immortal trap seal descended, it was destroyed by the 89 feet tall Zephyr Thunder Dermic body. The Zephyr Thunder Dermic body was infinitely close to a supreme Dharma characteristic, and its dermic powers were pure and condensed to an extreme. As for the immortal trap seal, its strength was ordinary among the damning dermic seals, and it could not do anything to Tao Lord Five Thunder's Zephyr Thunder Dermic body. Ha 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 ha. Tao Lord Five Thunder reared his head in laughter. That's all there is to Araki Takashi. That's all there is to it. Suzimo sneered as well. His dermic seal changed, and he bent his fingers slightly as though he was pinching a wheel, forming a strange dermic seal that smashed towards the Zephyr Thunder Dermic body. Among the damning dermic seals, it was one of the two most ferocious and powerful dermic seals, the Great Vajra Wheel Seal. Boom! There was a deafening sound. An incomparably gigantic golden wheel appeared in midair and crushed forward with a shuddering aura. The void beneath the golden wheel was trembling and twisting. It was as though nothing could stop that gigantic golden wheel. Not even the 89 feet tall Zephyr Thunder Dermic body. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the Great Vajra Wheel Seal collided with the Zephyr Thunder Dermic body. Crack! 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 A shuddering sound echoed from the Zephyr Thunder Dermic body, as cracks appeared on its surface, and spread continuously, covering its entire body instantly. Dermic powers drained rapidly. Psst! The crowd was shocked. The 89 feet tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was shattered by Suzimo's dermic seal as well. Tao Lord Five Thunder was shocked and opened his mouth, spitting out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, the dozens of Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics that were more than 80 feet tall moved at the same time and charged towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo's gaze intensified as he channeled his essence spirit and conjured hand seals with both hands, conjuring terrifying dharmic arts one after another. Endless dharmic powers surged towards Su Zimo. Even the dharmic powers of the heaven and earth dharma characteristics were forcefully absorbed by Su Zimo. The dharmic powers in Su Zimo's hands were almost boiling. Great Meru Mountain Seal. Sandstorm. Avicii Hell. Great Mighty Heavenly Dragon Expiation Art. Sea Burial Secret Skill. Apocalyptic Heavenly Fiend Fist. Su Zimo released more than 10 terrifying top-tier dharmic arts instantly as well, colliding heavily against the dozens of heaven and earth dharma characteristics. Boom! The entire void seemed to have exploded instantly. A blinding semicircular halo spread out suddenly with a heat wave that was oppressive. An incomparably domineering power swept in all directions like a tornado. The cultivators retreated one after another. Even some conjoint body mighty figures were shocked and retreated to avoid the sharpness. Was this the power of the Dharma characteristic realm? Before long the dust settled. A figure stood in midair. He was dressed in green robes, and his black hair danced in the wind. His gaze was like a torch, and he exuded a powerful aura that swept through the 9 heavens and 10 earths, like an emperor that had descended upon the world. More than 10 heaven and earth dharma characteristics shattered. Instantly, the entire heaven and earth valley fell silent. The crowd realized something. Tao Lord Araki Takashi had suppressed all the paragons on the dharma characteristic ranking single-handedly. Chapter 1296. Swoosh. A glass light suddenly descended with a sharp killing intent, almost tearing through the void as it smashed down towards Su Zimo's head. The glass light seemed to carry the might of heaven and earth, and was unstoppable. Conjoint body mighty figure. Tao Lord Araki Takashi is invincible in the Dharma characteristic realm. A conjoint body mighty figure can't sit still after all. The mighty figure of Glass Palace wants to kill Araki Takashi directly. The crowd was in an uproar. All of a sudden, on the other side of the crowd, a black shadow suddenly flew out and tore through the air, colliding with the glass light instantly. There was a deafening bang. The black shadow revealed its true form. It was a gigantic weapon tripod. On the other side, the conjoint body mighty figure who attacked shuddered and staggered several steps back. He glared in the direction of the weapon tripod with a terrible expression. Extreme fire. The mighty figure of Glass Palace grit his teeth and spat out 2 words. It was only at this moment that many cultivators realized what had happened. Just now, in a flash, the mighty figure of Glass Palace attacked and wanted to kill Su Zimo. However, he was saved by mighty figure Extreme Fire of 100 Refinement Sect. What are you trying to do? Extreme Fire stood up slowly with flames burning in his eyes. Today is the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking. Previously, when the Dharma Daojun attacked Zimo shamelessly, I didn't say anything. How can a conjoint body mighty figure like you be so shameless as well? Extreme Fire. Today has nothing to do with the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking. This is a feud between us super sects and Araki Takashi. A mighty figure of Heavenly Dipper sect stood out with an unfriendly expression. Chaos Essence sect's mighty figure was murderous as he said coldly, "That's right. Today, the feud between us and Araki Takashi has to be resolved." "It's fine to resolve the feud," Extreme Fire said. "It's inevitable for grudges to be fought and killed in the cultivation world. However, if you guys want to use your strength to bully others, you can't do that with me. Extreme Fire, let me give you a word of advice. It's best if you don't get involved." Immortal Sword laughed coldly and said, "Today, no one can protect Araki Takashi. He will definitely die." Extreme Fire retracted his weapon tripod without any bit of fear in his eyes as he said slowly, "Why? Are you guys from the so-called righteous sects so shameless? A bunch of conjoint body mighty figures are actually joining forces to deal with the Dharma Daojun. Is this the method of the righteous immortal sects?" A mighty figure of Snowdrift Valley stood out. Araki Takashi established the Wu Dao and imparted martial arts to all living beings. It's the fortune of the masses for him to establish the eternal monument. With such merit, Wouldn't all cultivators in the world be disappointed if you guys make things difficult for him? Not bad. A mighty figure of one of the immortal sects, Clear Wind Temple, nodded as well. Personal grudges are personal. If the conjoint body mighty figures of the immortal fiend and Buddhist sects were to join forces to deal with the Dharma Daojun, what's the big deal? Aren't you afraid of being laughed at by future generations? Among the 9 immortal sects, not all the super sects stood against Su Zimo. A mighty figure of pure maiden sect stood out as well and sneered. People of the immortal sects speak of benevolence and morality, but in reality, they're filled with scheming and scheming. How laughable. Umitba. A mighty figure of Dapamkara Monastery chanted a Buddhist proclamation as well. Patron Araki Takashi has supreme merit for all living beings in the world. Indeed, everyone shouldn't be like this. Araki Takashi's establishment of the Tao and imparting martial arts to all living beings had a huge impact on the entire cultivation world and Tianhuang mainland. That single incident pushed Su Zimo's reputation to its peak. Before long, the immortal Buddhist and fiend sects formed 2 factions. The ones who wanted to kill Su Zimo were naturally the group led by Immortal Sword. Those who stood on Su Zimo's side were Extreme Fire and the others. Of course, although the mighty figures of Snowdrift Valley and Clear Wind Temple were willing to stand out for Su Zimo, they might not fight against the mighty figures for Araki Takashi if a war broke out. Things are getting more interesting. The Golden Crow Third Prince rubbed his palms and laughed excitedly when he saw the human cultivation world in chaos. I really don't understand how we lost in the ancient war when the human race is in such a state. Rakshasa Feng Tian sneered. Piak. While the 2 factions were in a stalemate, someone at the side clapped and attracted the gazes of many cultivators. Heavenly Secrets finally stood out. Ever since Su Zimo appeared, he had been watching coldly from the sidelines. Now that the situation was in a stalemate, it was time for him to step in. Everyone, there's no need to argue. Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently. Why don't we ask Tao Lord Araki Takashi first? Since you're not here for the Dharma characteristic ranking today, what are you here for? This question could be said to have hit the nail on the head. Su Zimo did not hesitate and sneered. Pointing to Night Spirit beneath Immortal Sword and the others, he shouted, "There's nothing to hide. I'm here today to take him away." Ah! The moment he said that, a series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. Night Spirit was a cruel and cold-blooded primordial taboo. Apart from the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking, all the cultivators gathered here today were here to witness the killing of Night Spirit. But now, Su Zimo said that he wanted to take this extremely dangerous primordial taboo away, without hiding anything. Good. The smile in Heavenly Secrets' eyes intensified. As expected of Araki Takashi, you're indeed honest and upright. A primordial taboo was the enemy of the 10,000 races. Su Zimo's action was equivalent to standing against the 10,000 races. Nobody dared to imagine what kind of bloodshed this primordial taboo would cause in Tianhuang mainland in the future, if it was alive. This was an uncertain danger. It had to be killed. The immortal Buddhist and fiend sects did not doubt that at all. This time round, even the mighty figure of Snowdrift Valley frowned and reminded, Araki Takashi, don't be foolish. If you want to save him, no one can save you. These words were from the bottom of his heart. Unfortunately, Su Zimo had already made up his mind. He had made many preparations, and even used his trump card, the true bodies of dragons. There was no way he would back down. Extreme Fire's expression turned grim as well. Zimo, you have to think carefully about the consequences of your decision. Extreme Fire sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness. At that time, you'll be the enemy of the entire world. I alone won't be able to protect you. Even if you escape, there might not be a place for you in Tianhuang mainland. I know, Su Zimo said indifferently. Master, there's no need to say anything else. This is my decision. There's no need for you and 100 Refinement sect to get involved. Senior Crane Nian Shi, you guys don't have to do anything either. Su Zimo turned around and said to everyone from Misty Peak. Thereafter, he looked at Demoness G of Pure Maiden Sect and shook his head slowly. Su Zimo knew that if he chose to save Night Spirit, people like Extreme Fire and the others would stand by his side without hesitation. However, those people would definitely fall into this vortex and might be minced into pieces. That was because he knew that the enemy this time round was not only the conjoint body mighty figures of Sword Sect and Chaos Essence Sect, but also the primordial races hidden among the cultivators. That was the reason why Su Zimo did not inform Monkey and the others of the news of Night Spirit being captured. Chapter 1297. Everyone, you've heard it as well. Araki Takashi clearly knows that this beast is a taboo that wreaked havoc in the primordial era, and yet, he still wants to save it. What are Araki Takashi's intentions? Heavenly Secrets asked indifferently. Amitabha, Patron Araki Takashi, this is a matter of great importance. If this taboo is allowed to grow, it will definitely cause countless bloodbaths in Tianhuang mainland. The monk of Formless Monastery shook his head gently. That's right, we can't let it go. This beast is savage and murderous. If we let it go, there will definitely be trouble in the future, and no one in Tianhuang mainland will be spared. The crowd was agitated. In reality, most of the cultivators did not know much about the taboo race, and did not have any deep feud with Night Spirit either. The reason why they stood out now was because they were afraid of Night Spirit. Suddenly, Su Zimo laughed and surveyed the surroundings with a mocking expression. You guys say that he's savage and murderous. Let me ask you guys, back in Myriad Phenomenon City, when the Rakshasa and Protoss massacred the human cultivators, who was the one who stood in front of the human race to suppress the alien races? Was it you? Was it you? Su Zimo pointed at the crowd and shouted. The crowd was silent. No one replied. Although most of the cultivators present did not experience the battle in Myriad Phenomenon City, they had a rough idea of what happened there. If not for Su Zimo and Night Spirit, the human paragons would have been wiped out and buried in Myriad Phenomenon City in that battle. Even if the ancestor of Night Spirit was savage and murderous in the primordial era, what has that got to do with him? Su Zimo said, I watched Night Spirit grow up since he was young. Although he's good at killing, he won't kill for no reason. Still no one said anything. Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings. Densely packed cultivators stood in Heaven and Earth Valley. There were many sects and factions gathered. However, most of the cultivators had disapproving looks on their faces. Nobody was willing to listen to his logic. Many cultivators were already prejudiced by their first impressions. Su Zimo shook his head slightly. He knew that there was no need to explain further. Hehe, that's easy for you to say. The mighty figure of Heavenly Dipper sect sneered. It's easy to change mountains and rivers, but it's hard to change one's nature. This beast's bloodline is filled with killing and blood. By the time he starts his massacre, it'll be too late. Araki Takashi, you have to think clearly. Don't be foolish. Out of goodwill, the mighty figure of Snowdrift Valley said in a deep voice. Even if you can't bear to see him in trouble, it's impossible for you to rescue him. Today all the heroes are gathered. Putting aside the Dharma Daojun, how many conjoint body mighty figures are there in the super sects of the immortal, Buddhist, fiend and 5 heretical doctrines? Forget the fact that you can't save Night Spirit. Even if you can, you won't be able to escape. Not only Extreme Fire, but even the Snowdrift Valley's mighty figures could tell. The reason why so many conjoint body mighty figures of Sword Sect, Chaos Essence Sect, and the other immortal sects were here this time round, was most likely to deal with Su Zimo. An inescapable net had already been set up here, such that even an ant could not escape. As long as Su Zimo dared to attack, he would definitely die. Most importantly, killing Night Spirit today was an irresistible trend. Anyone who stood out to stop them would be crushed into dust. Extreme Fire could not. Neither could 100 Refinement sect behind him. In the face of the situation, those who complied would prosper, and those who defied would die. Watch Xiaoning, and don't let her take a single step away. The mighty figure of Elixir Yang sect said slowly. Yaoyan, you're not allowed to attack either. The mighty figure of Pure Maiden sect said slowly. The only thing Pure Maiden sect and Elixir Yang sect could do was not help either side. The current situation was extremely obvious. Anyone who dared to help Araki Takashi would become the enemy of Sword Sect, Chaos Essence Sect, and the other super sects. Furthermore, Enigma Palace was in charge of this matter. Enigma Palace had an extraordinary status in Tianhuang mainland, and most cultivators would not doubt it. Extreme Fire had a grim expression. He had not expected that today's matter would turn into a situation where there was no room for negotiation at all. First, you should leave. Right then, Night Spirit's throat moved as he said something. The iron hoop that was initially around his neck contracted once more and spikes pierced in one after another, causing blood to flow out. Under the restrictions of the heavenly god lock, Night Spirit had to endure endless pain with every single word he said. However, he still raised his head and ignored the tearing of his wound. He looked at Su Zimo in the distance and said, "First, they're after you. Don't fall for it." "Night Spirit, don't worry. I'll definitely take you away." Su Zimo's gaze turned colder as he looked at the bloodstains on Night Spirit's body. The killing intent around him was almost corporeal. Gigantic stars appeared one after another in the firmaments. TSK, TSK, TSK. What deep brotherhood. Immortal Sword sneered. "That's great. I'll send the two of you down to Acheron today. Anyone unrelated to today's matter, make way." Su Zimo was already filled with killing intent as he said coldly, "Today, I'm going to take Night Spirit away. I'll kill anyone who stops me." "What big words." Chaos Essence Sect's mighty figure sneered. "Who do you think you are? How dare you go against the entire world?" Heavenly Secrets said indifferently, "Let me say something as well. Anyone who helps Araki Takashi will be going against the entire cultivation world, the human race and all the races in the world, and will be punished by the entire world." Ha ha ha. Immortal Sword burst into laughter. "Araki Takashi, you can't even protect yourself, and yet, you want to kill someone? What a joke. Immortal Sword, it's time for you to pay with your life." Right at this moment, a cold and indifferent voice suddenly came from outside the crowd. It was somewhat hoarse and somewhat low, but it revealed a kind of frightening magic power. "Who is it?" Immortal Sword panicked and yelled out instinctively. This voice sounded familiar, but he couldn't believe it. "Who is it? How dare you stand out at a time like this?" The crowd turned towards the voice as well. Not far away, a black-robed cultivator walked over slowly from the void. His white hair reached his shoulders, and his eyes were pitch black. His hands were by his side, and in his right hand was a saber that was shrouded in fiend chi. "Ah, it's Shura." "What Shura?" "It's Yen Beichen." "Isn't Yen Beichen dead?" Shura's saber has already returned to Shura sect. Right now Shura is someone else. A series of discussions broke out in the crowd. Su Zimo looked at Shura and his heart ached. After not seeing him for almost 100 years, Shura's hair had already turned white. He did not know how much pain he had endured all these years alone. Why your essence spirit was injured? How is that possible? Immortal Sword looked at Yen Beichen, who was walking over slowly in disbelief. His eyes were filled with disbelief as he screamed. He realized that Yen Beichen's essence spirit had already recovered. "Yen Beichen, back off. You're a cultivator of Shura sect. Don't implicate the entire sect because of you." A Dharma Daojun of Shura sect stood out and berated Yen Beichen coldly. The mighty figure of Shura sect did not stop him, as though it was only right. "Who are you?" Yen Beichen's gaze shifted and he asked expressionlessly. "I'm the current Shura." The Dharma Daojun had a proud expression as he flipped his palm, and the Shura's saber appeared in his hand. "You think you're worthy of being called Shura?" Yen Beichen slashed backwards at the Dharma Daojun's head. A black beam tore through the air, with a suffocating aura of death. Before the titular disciple who claimed to be Shura could react, he was sliced into two by Yen Beichen, and his essence spirit was destroyed. Chapter 1298. Pust. Everyone was in an uproar. No one expected Yen Beichen to attack. Less than that, no one expected that the titular disciple of Shura sect, the Shura of this generation, could not even defend against a single slash from Yen Beichen. How ruthless! This is what it means to kill to attain the Tao of Shura. When Shura went crazy, He even killed a cultivator from his own sect. He's truly fearless and cold-blooded. Many cultivators discussed softly with wary expressions. Yen Beichen, what are you doing? The mighty figure of Shura's sect was enraged as he pointed at the cultivator, who had just died, and shouted, I can ignore you killing him. The fight for Shura is about killing to begin with. However, you're not allowed to interfere in today's matter. Do you want to become enemies with the entire cultivation world? So what? Yen Beichen asked indifferently. The mighty figure of Shura's sect was speechless. Su Zimo was probably the only one who could understand Yen Beichen's feelings. Qin Pian Ran was dead, and the Hatred Fiend Saber acknowledged him as its master. Yen Beichen obtained the Hatred Sutra and inherited all the inheritance of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. He hated the heavens for being blind, the earth for being heartless, and the cultivation world for not letting them off. So what if he became enemies with the cultivation world? If there was a single person in this world who was fearless and had no qualms, it would be Shura Yen Beichen. Yen Beichen looked at Immortal Sword and said slowly, Immortal Sword, I've waited for so long. You're finally willing to come out. All these years, Yen Beichen had been waiting for an opportunity. Although he inherited the Hatred Sutra, he did not lose his rationality. If he charged into Sword Sect rashly, not only would he not be able to avenge Qin Pian Ran, he would also die. Yen Beichen had waited for this day for almost 100 years. Yen Beichen would definitely not miss this opportunity. Just as Su Zimo thought, whoever dared to stop him, he would kill them. Shura, it's impossible for you to kill me even if you reach the conjoint body realm. Just now, the moment Yen Beichen attacked, the Immortal Sword had already sensed that Yen Beichen was already a conjoint body mighty figure. However, on second thought, Immortal Sword recalled that all the major sects were gathered. Notwithstanding Chaos Essence Sect, Heavenly Dipper Sect, and the other immortal sects, even Sword Sect had more than 30 conjoint body mighty figures this time round. Yen Beichen was only at the early stage conjoint body realm. No matter how strong he was, how many conjoint body mighty figures could he fight against? Furthermore, there were experts of the primordial 6 races hidden around him. Yen Beichen's gaze shifted to Tianji. You were the one who deduced our whereabouts. Tell that to Immortal Sword, right? Yen Beichen was no fool. He had long been suspicious of how his and Qin Pian Ran's whereabouts had been leaked. There must be another expert behind this. Now that he saw Immortal Sword and Tianji joining forces, he already had a guess. So what if I am? There was still a smile on Tianji's face. I once swore that I wouldn't let off anyone related to Pian Ran's death. Yen Beichen said. After Immortal Sword, it's your turn, Tianji. The moment he said that, Yen Beichen disappeared from the spot and turned into rumbling fiend chi that was pitch black like ink, surging towards the Sword Sect faction. Senior brothers, help me stop him. Immortal Sword said in a deep voice with a calm expression. Although he was a conjoint body mighty figure, his essence spirit was injured, and he did not dare to take Yen Beichen head-on. He could only seek help from the other mighty figures of Sword Sect. Don't worry, junior brother. He's just an early-stage conjoint body fiend. There's nothing to fear. A mighty figure of Sword Sect sneered, and leaped into midair with his sword, slashing down viciously at the fiend chi below. Clang! The sword beam was resplendent with an extremely sharp edge, as though it wanted to slice the entire world into two. Dharma Daojun, who was present, did not even manage to see how the mighty figure of Sword Sect attacked. He merely took a glance from afar, and felt a piercing pain in his eyes. The might of a single sword strike was so terrifying. Swoosh! The fiend chi below surged and devoured the sword beam without dodging. The mighty figure of Sword Sect's expression changed. His sword was devoured without a trace by the fiend chi like a stone ox entering the sea. Instead, the fiend chi turned even more terrifying and floated rapidly, charging towards the mighty figure of Sword Sect. Startling Sword Dao! The mighty figure of Sword Sect hollered and waved the sword in his hand, releasing streams of sword chi instantly. They were stunning and sharp as they pierced into the incoming fiend chi. The fiend chi merely paused for a moment before spreading. Right in front of countless gazes, it opened up a gigantic black hole and dragged the mighty figure of Sword Sect in. Ah! A tragic cry sounded from the fiend chi. Immediately after, a corpse fell out of the fiend chi. The mighty figure of Sword Sect's eyes were widened, and his cheeks were filled with black streaks of blood. His eyes were filled with endless fear, as though he had suffered a huge shock before his death. He died with grievances. Hatred fiend technique. Heavenly Secrets narrowed his gaze, and exclaimed softly after recognizing the origin of the fiend chi right away. The expressions of the cultivators changed when they heard that. The fiend Emperor Hatred was way too famous in the cultivation world. Among the emperors, the fiend Emperor Hatred was not any weaker than the human emperor. All of you join forces. There's no need to fight him one-on-one. Immortal Sword reminded hurriedly. Many mighty figures of Sword Sect reacted and attacked as well. Shoo! Instantly, the entire world was enveloped by extremely sharp sword chi, and the void seemed to be sliced into pieces. The Tao of the sword was the most lethal. Sword Sect was also a place of pilgrimage for all sword cultivators. The killing force that erupted from the 30-plus mighty figures of the Sword Sect when they attacked was obvious, and it caused all the cultivators present to shudder with fear. Many Dharma Daojun retreated one after another, afraid that they would be affected by the sword chi. Endless hatred. Suddenly, a hoarse and deep voice sounded from the fiend chi. Immediately after, a pitch-black saber appeared in the world. Fiend chi coiled around it, and it emitted endless hatred. It hated the heavens and earth endlessly. Clang, 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 clang. The hatred fiend saber collided against many swords, and let out a series of metallic sounds with sparks flying everywhere. Right in front of everyone, more than 30 swords were repelled by the hatred fiend saber. Every single sword was tainted with a faint black mist, and their light dimmed significantly. Their might was greatly reduced, and even their sharpness was retracted. What? Shura's combat strength has reached this level? More than 30 mighty figures of Sword Sect can't even injure him. Yen Beichen is probably even stronger than the fiend Emperor Hatred back then after inheriting the Hatred Sutra and possessing the Shura Sutra. Sword Sect was in chaos. Right then, Su Zimo had already moved and charged towards Night Spirit. Stop him. Araki Takashi, I've been watching you the entire time. Hand over your life. Many conjoint body mighty figures of Chaos Essence Sect, Heavenly Dipper Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace, and the other immortal, Buddhist and fiend sects attacked one after another and suppressed Su Zimo. Zimo, I'll help you. At the last moment Extreme Fire stood out. Although he was wary of Su Zimo, no matter what, Su Zimo had saved his life. If not for Su Zimo, Extreme Fire would have died long ago. That alone was enough for Extreme Fire to not watch Su Zimo fight alone. Extreme Fire, your opponent is me. Right then, a sinister voice sounded not far away. Immediately after, a figure stood in front of Extreme Fire. Chapter 1299. Purple Flame. Extreme Fire's gaze shifted and landed on the intruder. His eyes burned with raging flames as he said coldly, "How dare you show yourself?" Purple Flame was originally a cultivator of 100 Refinement Sect. Later on, he betrayed the sect and founded Hellfire Hall. He was once Extreme Fire's senior brother. 50 years ago, Extreme Fire led his sect's cultivators into Hellfire Hall and suppressed the cultivators of Hellfire Hall with a thunderous might. Purple Flame was severely injured and fled without a trace. In that battle, more than 10 conjoint body mighty figures of Hellfire Hall died, and hundreds of Dharma Daojun died. Hellfire Hall was destroyed overnight. This battle was one of the few major battles in the cultivation world in the past 100 years. Once again, Extreme Fire revealed his domineering methods to the cultivation world. To think that after a few decades, Purple Flame would appear in Heaven and Earth Valley after recovering from his injuries. Junior brother, let's settle the grudge between us today. Purple Flame's voice was sinister, and his gaze was venomous. Extreme Fire's gaze focused and his expression changed slightly. Through his spirit consciousness, Purple Flame's cultivation realm had already reached the perfected conjoint body realm. 50 years ago, Purple Flame's cultivation realm was only at the late-stage conjoint body realm. After the conjoint body realm, every single minor realm was extremely difficult to break through. For more than 100 years, even with Extreme Fire's talent, his cultivation had been hovering at the early stage conjoint body realm. Furthermore, Extreme Fire had severely injured Purple Flame. In just a few short decades, Purple Flame's cultivation realm had broken through once more to the perfected conjoint body realm. It was not hard to imagine that Ziyan must have obtained a great fortuitous encounter to be able to cultivate to this level and make a comeback. Surprised, right? Purple Flame noticed the shock in Extreme Fire's eyes and grinned. I've always been the loser in our fights. However, this time round I'll be the victor. Furthermore, it's enough for me to win against you once. I won't give you a second chance. Woo! Purple Flame's glabella shone, and a gigantic weapon tripod flew out. The tripod burned with an extremely cold hellfire and charged towards Extreme Fire with a sinister aura. Go! Extreme Fire summoned his Destiny Dermic weapon as well, and the gigantic weapon tripod descended. Flames burned on the tripod as well. However, Extreme Fire's flames were even more scorching and masculine, as though they could incinerate everything in the world. One was yin and one was yang. Two different types of flames, and two weapon crafting cauldrons collided with each other. Boom! With a loud bang, flames soared into the sky. This scene was like the collision of two blazing suns, bursting into balls of fire that flew in all directions. There was even a rain of fire in the sky. This was the combat power of a conjoint body mighty figure. His every move could shake the heavens and earth, and cause mountains to crumble and rocks to crack. Extreme Fire's expression was grave. That single clash caused his weapon tripod to retreat slightly. It was disadvantaged in terms of strength. After all, there was a difference of 3 minor realms. Even if Extreme Fire cultivated the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra, there was still a slight difference in dermic powers between the two of them. Extreme Fire frowned slightly, feeling worried. Strength was only one of the factors that determined the outcome of a battle. What he was most proficient in was the art of controlling fire. Even though Ziyan was stronger than him in terms of magic power, he was not afraid at all. He was still confident that he could suppress Ziyan. What he was worried about was Su Zimo. Now, Yen Beichen had barged into the Sword Sect's camp and was surrounded by over 30 mighty figures of the Sword Sect. He was entangled by Ziyan, and it would be difficult to determine the victor within a short period of time. As for Su Zimo, he had to face the conjoint body mighty figures of Heavenly Dipper Sect, Chaos Essence Sect, and Zephyr Thunder Palace alone. Su Zimo would most likely be reduced to ashes in a single exchange. Young Master! Nian Qi exclaimed and charged forward without hesitation. However, Nian Qi was only at the Dharma characteristic realm. Although she possessed the bloodline of a Protoss, given her combat strength, she could only defend against 2 or 3 conjoint body mighty figures at most. Right now, there were more than 50 conjoint body mighty figures that stood out from the immortal Buddhist and Fiend sects. Araki Takashi, you killed the titular disciple of Glass Palace and many paragons. Today, we'll make you pay with your blood. The mighty figure of Glass Palace hollered and attacked brazenly. Bang! 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 Many conjoint body mighty figures attacked one after another and released earth-shaking dermic arts. Mighty figure dermic weapons tore through the air with terrifying might. The entire void was trembling and trembling. The dermic arts of 50 conjoint body mighty figures condensed into a surging sea of dermic powers that seemed like it could devour everything. Even conjoint body mighty figures would be torn into pieces without a corpse, let alone Dharma Daojun like Su Zimo and Nian Qi. Su Zimo reared his head and howled into the skies. Like a maniac, he conjured sword arts with both hands and waved them wildly in all directions. Qi! Qi! Instantly, 1,000 heaven-slaying sword qi burst forth. They were densely packed and surged with killing intent, as though they wanted to tear the world apart. Many stars appeared in the firmaments. The trajectories of those stars were extremely chaotic and collided. The killing intent of the heavens shifted the stars. Under normal circumstances, given Su Zimo's current combat strength, a single heaven-slaying sword qi was enough to threaten ordinary conjoint body mighty figures. Although the conjoint body mighty figures that attacked right now came from super sects such as the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects, and were all top experts of the conjoint body realm, their scalps tingled when they saw that. What sort of scene was it when 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi burst forth instantly? Psst! More than 50 conjoint body mighty figures gasped. It was unknown if it was because of the reflection of the 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi, or because they were shocked, but the faces of the conjoint body mighty figures turned pale. To this is the power of the Dharma Daojun. The surrounding cultivators were already speechless. Even the experts of the primordial 6 races who were hidden in the crowd narrowed their gazes and looked at Su Zimo seriously for the first time, gradually retracting their underestimation. If they were in his shoes, it would be difficult for them to receive the 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi single-handedly. The 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi collided with the dermic powers, formed by more than 50 conjoint body mighty figures. The vast sea was riddled with holes by the 1,000 sword chi, and dermic powers drained rapidly. Clang! 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 Many mighty figure dermic weapons collided with the heaven-slaying sword chi, and were repelled with a series of sparks. There were too many heaven-slaying sword chi. Dozens of heaven-slaying sword chi tore through the dermic powers sea, and pierced towards the surrounding conjoint body mighty figures with endless sharpness. Poof! 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 Some conjoint body mighty figures were pierced by a heaven-slaying sword chi and cried out tragically. Some conjoint body mighty figures were sliced in half by a sword chi. Instantly, severed limbs flew in midair and blood mist spewed out. Those conjoint body mighty figures were rather lucky. After all, conjoint body mighty figures had exuberant vitality and powerful blood chi. Even if half of their bodies were sliced by the heaven-slaying sword chi, they could still survive. However, a few conjoint body mighty figures could not dodge in time, and their heads were pierced by a few heaven-slaying sword chi. Their essence spirits were destroyed, and they died on the spot. The crowd was shocked. More than 50 conjoint body mighty figures joined forces to clash with a single Dharma Daojun. However, several mighty figures were killed and many were injured. Many mighty figures were in a mess. What kind of sword Dao is that? It's so terrifying. I heard that it's one of the 3 ancient sword arts, the heaven-slaying sword art. Araki Takashi snatched it from Immortal Sword. No wonder. Immortal Sword's expression darkened when he heard the discussions around him. However, he could no longer care about Su Zimo. That was because he had yet to escape from Yen Beichen's killing intent. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.